Okay. All right, calling to order the October 20th, 2015 meeting of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force Compliance and Amendments Committee. Let's call the first item.
Item number 1, call to order, roll call, and agenda changes. Roll call. Member Pilpel. Pilpel present.
Thank you. Present.
Member Washburn. Washburn absent. Member Hepner.
Present.
Hepner present. We have a quorum. I believe you have before you today a notice from Mr. Hartz regarding controller's item, which is item number 6, file number 14096, stating that he believes that the controller has complied with his request, and he requests that the item be considered complied with. I do have the controller's office's procedures as we requested.
Okay. I would like to dispose of that item up front, if possible. Can I hear a motion to do so? Take that item out of order, or?
Sorry, it's just taking me a moment to pull together. Was that? Sorry.
Pull it together, Pilpo.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Was that actually in our packet, or was that a supplemental item?
It came in late, I believe.
I have a copy.
Member Hefner has.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure that I got a copy. Did I get a copy? I guess now I'm looking at a copy. If I could just get a copy sometime later, that would be great.
And we have a member of the controller's office present, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
And this.
And is Mr. Hartz present?
He is not.
Okay.
Sorry, so this is item 6.
Yes.
Does Mr. Riedstrom from the controller's office have anything to add on that before we decide whether to dispose?
Very briefly, Todd Riedstrom, Deputy Controller. As requested by the task force, we did provide our policies and procedures, and as I mentioned at the last full meeting, we responded to over 300 requests over the last year or so, and so we rarely get a complaint, and I really want you to know that we take this very seriously, and we'll work to do everything we can to make sure everyone is provided the information we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm still a little behind here. I've not had a chance to review the controller's office policies and procedures. Was that something that we were going to do in connection with that item?
Not that I recall. This was largely, in my understanding, as long as Ray is satisfied with the response from the controller's office, we can dispose of this.
Okay. So with that understanding, and when I have a chance to go through this, if I have any concerns, I will communicate those to the controller's office.
You just want to make a motion to?
Yeah. So what would the appropriate motion be?
The motion to take the matter out of order.
Correct.
And then there will be a motion on the matter itself.
Can we combine
the motions?
Yeah.
Yes.
So why don't we just? So what is the substantive? Sorry. What is the substantive action on the?
The motion will be to take the item out of order, and the motion would be to
find compliance.
Find compliance of the order of determination and conclude the matter.
Okay. So I will make a motion to. Taking this item out of order, I make a motion that we find compliance with the order of determination and conclude the matter.
I'll second that motion. And is there any public comment on the motion?
Public comment would be that I think the controller's office has a very good track record towards helping people. I think it's carried over from Monique Zamunda. It was a big priority that they wanted to carry over, and I think they've done a great job at it.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Michael Petrellis. I was just explaining to Todd that my experiences with the Controller's Office regarding sunshine requests have been excellent. And last night after 9 p.m., I made a request for the district allocation slush funds that each member of the Board of Soups gets. And I said, please send me this information at your earliest convenience. And by 12 noon today, I had the information, I had the responsive record, and that is really impressive to have overnight received the information I requested. So I applaud the Controller's Office.
Thank you. Making the rest of them look shabby. Thank you for taking
I'm sorry
care
it
of
took so long to get that info to you.
that. Okay, so if we can you just vote on that briefly, quickly.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, again, this is not my day today, but I echo the appreciation for the Controller's Office. They've always done a good job, and I know with Todd there, that'll continue. And regardless of the nature of the request, the amount of time that it takes, there's a lot of budget and analysis work that goes behind a lot of the requests, whether it's from people that we regularly see or other people. And so they do a lot of good work, along with everything else that they do for the city. So.
Okay.
I'm done. I'm happy to take
On that motion, the motion to take the item out of order and to find compliance with the order of determination. Member Pilpil.
Aye.
Pilpil, aye. Washburn absent. Chair Hepner.
Aye.
Hepner, aye. The motion passes.
Yay, Controller.
Okay, that concludes item number 6. And
Thank you.
are there any other agenda changes?
There are no other agenda changes.
Okay. Then let's proceed with
I
item
believe that the complainant has agreed to have item number 2, 3, and 4 heard at the same time.
Okay, 4 is a complaint that we are hearing for the first time. 2 and 3 are hearings on the status of the order of determination. So would it not make sense to perhaps
Do 2 and
address
3.
2 and 3 together, and then we can take 4 separately under our complaint committee procedures, if that's okay with the complainant?
I'm better with
Yes.
that.
Okay, and is the respondent okay with that as well? All right, then let's proceed.
Item number 2, file number 15029, hearing on the status of the order of determination, complaint filed by Michael Petrellis against President London Breed, Board of Supervisors, violating Administrative Code, Section 67.21E, for failure to send a knowledgeable representative to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force hearing regarding failure to respond to immediate disclosure request in a timely and/or complete manner. Item number 3, file number 15060, hearing on the status of order of determination, complaint filed by Michael Trellis against President London Breed, Board of Supervisors, for violating Administrative Code, Section 67.21E, for failure to send a knowledgeable representative to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force hearing regarding failure to respond to immediate disclosure request in a timely and/or complete manner.
Okay. See, this is not a new item, of course. This is the second time that we're reviewing these, so I believe this is the first time that we're reviewing this with the presence of a representative from President Breed's office. I have reviewed the communication since the order of determination. It looks like there are still concerns about why certain requested records, namely the public calendars, have not been turned over by the respondent's office. And let's get to the bottom of why that is. Why don't we hear from Mr. Petrellis first as to what your understanding of is the way where we are right now.
I feel that since the last hearing about this matter, my good faith efforts with London Breed's office have again been met with nothing but contempt and attempts at runaround. The office is very uncooperative. They do not turn over documents. They offer up very lame excuses about why they cannot produce public documents, and I think it is really shameful that the meetings of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force are not aired so that more taxpayers can see exactly how anti-sunshine the Board of Supervisors President London Breed is. I need to remind this committee that part of the contempt shown toward me extends toward this task force. As Chair Hepner just pointed out, this is the first time someone has deigned to come from London Breed's office to address your concerns. I think that we need a better standard set by the President of the Board of Supervisors regarding sunshine requests, and I look forward to hearing what her office finally has to say before the task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petrellis. And Right, and I'm just noting here as well that this file pertains to a request for email records, I believe, from President London Breed's office for the period of January 2015 to March 15th, 2015. Is that correct? And then there was a subsequent request that is detailed in, or we have a few emails regarding a request for President Breed's work calendar from June 1st, 2015 through July 31st, 2015. So that's a different request. That's kind of a separate request. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So just for my own understanding that,
Right. One deals with emails, one deals with the calendar, and the bottom line issue is they have not produced the requested responsive records.
Okay.
And if they have, and it's in that pile in front of Mr. Young, please let me know.
Okay. But yeah, then file 3, of course, pertains to the work calendar that was requested for the period February 1st through April 12th, 2015. So again, this more recent back and forth between yourself and President Breed's office is as to your work calendar from June 1st through July 31st, 2015. Did you ever receive the calendar or any response to your request for the calendar from February 1st through April 12th?
That's a good question. That was many months ago. I can't remember, and when the representatives from London Breed's office step up, we'll find out. I think that here we see the burden, again, is on the complainant to answer your question from months ago. There's a problem here with the sunshine process in terms of when a complaint is filed, and now it is X number of months later, and part of the reason why it is so many months later is because the London Breed's office has shown contempt by not sending a representative sooner. That's a long-winded answer of saying, I don't know.
Mr.
Did
Chair?
they produce the documents?
Yes, Member Popo.
My recollection is that their response was that they did not have a calendar for that subject.
I recall that as well. I'm just trying to figure out if this, the more recent communications regarding the June and July calendars, whether we should consider that a separate request, and I would suggest then not consider it today because I don't think it's before us as part of a separate complaint. And whether, in the alternative, which I think is probably the more appropriate approach, is just to consider the 2 requests specifically handled by files 2 and 3, and that is the calendars from February 1st through April 12th, 2015, and that's file 3. And in file 2, it's about email communications for a certain period of time. And then we can deal with the request for calendars from June and July 2015 separately, and I think probably not today. In any event,
Yeah.
I think that that's correct. I would like to hear from the respondent about their responses, if any, to the matters dealt with in file 2 and file 3, and try to get an understanding there.
I mean, I would just add
Yeah.
to that, to the extent that there are changes to policies and procedures going forward that impact these things, or the request that isn't really before us except by way of information for the June and July calendars.
Okay.
We're happy to discuss those.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right.
Sure. Good afternoon. And I just want to thank you, Chair Hebner, for starting by saying we'd like to get to the bottom of this, because that's our objective too. And also want to thank you for helping to clarify what exactly the requests are on the table, because frankly, I've had a hard time keeping track of what's on the agenda today, what the requests are. So we're happy to go through these one by one and figure out a resolution. I think my colleague Iris Wong is here with me as well and can help speak to some of the calendar issues, which is something that I'm not directly involved with. But I do just want to mention that both she and I were here in July when these items were previously calendared. We're happy to be here this afternoon and get to the bottom of it.
Right. I recall you were here on one of these, or was it a different complaint? Because there was one instance in which you were not before us, and then another in which you were, and I appreciated your presence there.
Yeah. So I
okay.
think there was one in June, I want to say, where I had reached out via email because we couldn't be there.
Okay.
And then I think there was one in August where both she and I were there, and the items that are before us this afternoon were continued at that meeting.
Okay.
So we were present.
Okay.
And thank you both for being here today.
Sure.
We appreciate it.
It's a short commute.
So I would like to address the issue of the work calendar first, and I believe that's then Ms. Wong. The request was for work calendar from the period of February 1st, 2015 through April 12th, 2015, and I'm wondering what the status of compliance with that request is.
Yes, Iris Wong, Legislative Aide to Supervisor President Lyndon Breed. This request was actually made before my time. The response was made from Christine Keener, who was I replaced her in May. It was President Breed's position at the time that she was not required to maintain calendars. However, we have reviewed the records, and there are a handful of items in her calendar during that time period, and we're happy to share that with Mr. Petrellis if he'd so choose.
And
Okay.
I can elaborate on this briefly because it does precede Ms. Wong by a little bit. Members of the Board of Supervisors prior to the legislation that passed over the summer were not required to maintain a public calendar in the way that the mayor is, for example. And so there is some overlap between what is a political event, what is a personal event. And so there was not previously a specific public calendar because she was not legally required to maintain one. But as Ms. Wong mentioned, we can go back and parse out the handful of events that would fall under that rubric and are happy to disclose it.
I appreciate that. And just a couple notes, and having sort of thought about this extensively, right, really. The requirement for public calendars, I understand that came into play a little bit later. There was some ambiguity as to whether that applied to supervisors before the recent clarification at the Board of Supervisors. I think that whether a calendar was required to be kept or not, if one was in fact kept, that is a public record, and that is subject to disclosure as a public record. Yeah.
And it may be subject to certain redactions as appropriate. It's not that the entire thing is itself necessarily entirely subject to disclosure, but to the extent that one keeps a calendar.
So today, then, I appreciate the willingness to turn over that information to Mr. Petrellis. I'm a little concerned about why it has not taken place yet. And just if the willingness is there, let's get it over to him is what my thought is, and let's just conclude this. And then how are we feeling about the new regulation? Are we doing well with maintaining a public calendar and fulfilling those requirements subsequently? Because I suspect from recent communications that this might be a matter coming before us again. So can we preempt some of that with an explanation of what your current process is?
I think the nice thing about the legislation that passed over the summer is it removes that ambiguity that you made mention, or that Mr. Pilpel made mention to. So it should be much easier in the future. And it really is, with respect to things that occurred in the past, it really is an issue of redaction and transfer and figure out what belongs where. And so I think, thankfully, that ambiguity has been removed.
Good. Okay.
And I'd also like to comment that Mr. Petrellis has submitted 2 separate requests for President Breed's calendar, and we have submitted those records.
To Mr. Petrellis?
After August 14th.
I see.
After the clarification was made.
Okay. So I actually...
And that is, sorry, Mr. Hebner, that is actually in addition to a request for my and my colleague Iris Valley Brown's calendar for 2014, which we also submitted.
Okay. So I'm actually not inclined to get too thick in the weeds on the more recent requests, which I have not, had a chance to review those files. I don't think they're really before us. I'm mostly concerned about the earlier request for the February through April 12th or whatever calendars. Member Pilpel, did you want to?
I just had a couple of questions, and then I'm pretty close to closure on this. Again, if you have those responsive records, feel free to provide them to Mr. Petrellis. That would be great. Remind me, what date did the new legislation take effect? August something?
August 14th, 2015.
Okay. And so from that date forward, you're now keeping a calendar pursuant to the requirements and on a daily basis?
Correct.
Okay. And I appreciate that, and we appreciate that. Whether or not Mr. Petrellis or anybody else requests that calendar, it seems like it is prudent to keep it available, given that President Breed is the president of the board. It seems to me that people are going to request it. So I wouldn't delay editing and maintaining calendar entries until you get a request. I would just try to keep that up to date as best you can. Does that? I mean, I'm just suggesting doing that to be prudent.
Noted.
Okay. And I'm not trying to get at any more or less information than is required. I just think that kind of makes sense.
Right. I think you're right. I agree.
And then as the only other comment I wanted to make, and I think I made this at one of the full task force meetings, the subsequent communication that we got from Mr. Petrellis relative to some back and forth he had with you about the board recess. I think I expressed concern that notwithstanding the board being on recess, it seems to me that there's an obligation to respond one way or the other. And even if one of you or two of you aren't in the office, somebody ought to be checking messages and being able to respond. And so I was not crazy about the response that the board's on recess and we'll get back to you when the board's back.
Yeah, so I had wanted to address that at our previous meeting. I had, under Wilson Ng's then records manager for the board, he had advised me that would be okay response. But then I had talked to John Givner, who is our city deputy city attorney, and I had then sent an email to Mr. Petrellis on August 18th telling him that we do not have the calendar records.
Okay, and going forward, Connor,
yeah, if I could just chime in briefly. I mean, I
Yeah.
think there is an important distinction between supervisors' offices and departments, or even the mayor's office. The mayor has dozens of staffers. Departments obviously have hundreds, in some cases a couple thousand. We have 3 staffers plus a supervisor. So there may be circumstances where genuinely nobody's in the office, and that could be for 24 hours, could be for longer. And August would be the time when that would happen, and that's not specific to us. I think that's true of all 11 offices. So it's just, it is a challenge that I think is unique to the west side of the second floor.
Mm-hmm. I'm sympathetic to that. I guess maybe the way I would parse it a little better is if you receive a request, if someone's actually going through the email, if you get a request, then I think you have sort of an obligation to respond. For me, it's not triggered by when the request is made, it's when the request is received. And it's less for me that you're in the office, more that you're actually checking the email.
Sure.
Or the voice, or...
If there is a response, it should be a substantive one. Yeah, no disagreement. I'm just pointing out that there are scheduling circumstances that are a little bit unique to board supervisors.
And I'm not. And if that requires you to invoke an extension or something else, that makes sense. I mean, I can see circumstances where someone knows that you're going to be on vacation, and so they pile on a huge IDR, knowing that you can't respond to that. That's gaming the system, and I'm not with that. But just that if you're receiving messages and responding, that you find some way to deal with it. And I think we understand.
Yeah, no disagreement there.
Okay.
I may just clarify just a little point there. I think that the request is effective as of the time that it is made, in that making it effective as of the time it is received really puts a burden on the complainant to ensure that it has been received in a timely manner, when in fact I think that burden rests with the respondent to have a mechanism in place in order to receive those requests in a timely manner and respond effectively. I also, just in what the Sunshine Ordinance I think spells out is the rigid rules of all of this, and I highly suspect that by cultivating a friendly relationship with people who are requesting information, that a lot of the hard deadlines will be more leniently addressed or more leniently understood by a complainant seeking an IDR, for instance. And I know that's a little that may sound naive, but I genuinely think that by just responding in some way immediately, hey, received your request, we're on recess right now, we'll respond to it. We're invoking our extension, which you're allowed to do underneath the Sunshine Ordinance, particularly if that record is voluminous. We are invoking our extension and we'll respond to you as soon as possible. But having that response, having that communication with a complainant will soften this process substantially, I suspect. And I know that that's,
I don't think that is naive. I think there are circumstances where we've definitely been able to do that. I think it may prove elusive with Mr. Petrellis, but there are examples with reporters, for example, they will submit a sunshine request, and I'll call them and say, what are you looking for? How can we help you? And we'll just resolve it over the phone. So there definitely are instances where that has worked.
Cool. So moving forward then, I appreciate that. And moving forward, I think that we need to figure out what to do with the current complaint and the current order of determination. We're in sort of a position where I think technically it's hard for us to find compliance because those records have not been turned over yet. My inclination here would be to find a way, and I'm happy to discuss this with both of you and with Member Popal as well, to determine whether we can't put this on the full task force hearing for a hearing as to a violation that the records request has failed to have been responded to, not just a failure to appear, but a failure to respond to the request. And if this is addressed in a timely manner as of today, you guys can communicate that to us in advance of the next full task force meeting, and perhaps we don't have to meet at the next full task force meeting. That's one creative solution for how to get out of this, short of finding compliance today, but still provides an incentive to get this done so that we don't have to drag everybody back here at the full task force meeting. Thoughts on that proposal?
So we actually did something similar at the Board of Supervisors with what became Proposition H. The board passed a motion at the last regular meeting during the July session that said, essentially it was an if-then.
That was very creative, by the way.
Thank you. Because we then had to call a special meeting Friday morning and narrowly got quorum, and half of my hair fell out, but it's in the past.
It's back.
The reason I bring this up is because you can, I think, using that example, pass a motion that says if-then. So, if the records are turned over as discussed at this meeting, detailing the calendar that he asked for and the time periods that he asked for, then this item will become moot. That would be the model that I would suggest.
Right, and I think that would be good, allowing for Petrellis Mr. Complainant to chime in on this would be prudent, I think, and if that.
Could I?
Yeah.
Just two things. Sorry. It also occurs to me, going back to the recess for a second. I understand that if there's a request for records that your office maintains and that you have to sort of cull and find, I can understand invoking an extension or dealing with that when someone is in the office. It seems like the calendar might be the kind of document that you could, in advance of a recess, lodge with, who is Wilson's successor? Richard? No. Brent, sorry. Brent, or somebody else in the office saying, here is our calendar for the last month in case anyone's looking for it while we're on recess, because that's the kind of thing that you already will have redacted it. It's kind of a final document. If anyone wants it, there you go. But I would, again, distinguish that from if someone asks for records about HIV or Muni or some specific issue where you have to pull stuff. So, again, there may be creative ways that you can deal with the recess issue.
Right, like and that goes to like a best practices sort of thing, right? But,
and I don't think we're in great disagreement about that. Back to the issue before us, it seems to me like if there was likely a violation and that there were calendar records that weren't made available, that still haven't been made available, even if they are, and I would encourage you to make them available, I think we could make a recommendation to the full task force just to find that violation and conclude the matter at that point. I mean, it's sort of like a reverse of our usual process where we're having the follow-up hearing now and then finding the violation because you weren't available for the substantive hearing before the task force. So we're sort of doing that a little backwards.
I see.
If there is or was a likely violation, I think we should sort of find that. But I think we've essentially already had the follow-up and dealt with the matter going forward.
Right, and then under that recommendation,
which is
it still leaves the window open to not having to come back to address these matters specifically at the full task force. But instead of just
becomes
putting
a
it on the
committee
agenda,
recommendation.
our mechanism of putting it on the agenda would be to recommend a violation. Okay.
It's a little more than what you suggested, but it's not too dissimilar.
So can we hear from the complainant as to whether that sits well?
So I'm sorry, could you just explain that to me really quickly? So the motion in this meeting would be to say what?
The idea is that we would make a recommendation back to the full task force to find a substantive violation here because the calendar information from February, March was not made available to Mr. Petrellis, but either with that recommendation or the understanding is that we would not, if the task force accepts that recommendation and makes that finding, we would not forward it back here for a follow-up compliance hearing. We would just end the matter at the task force.
Okay, so it would just be a finding of a violation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, in fact, But why don't you think about that for a moment? Why don't we hear from Mr.
It's not my
Petrellis?
preference. I mean,
I understand. Why don't you think about that for a second? Why don't we hear from Mr. Petrellis and then back? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Michael Petrellis again. This office finds more creative ways to be anti-sunshine than really any other supervisor's office or any other office, I believe, in City Hall. I sent you earlier today, maybe you already received it, the August-September calendar for London Breed. Here it is. Victor can show it to you visually. It's a joke, okay? I also want to address this matter of they're on recess. Listen, there's 4 paid people. They're paid very well, I might add. 4 paid people to serve the public every working day. Just because they're on recess does not give them the right to abandon the city and its needs. And the needs include sunshine requests. Please do not try and tell me that because the soups aren't meeting on Tuesdays, 4 people, 4 paid employees are not going into that office. Forget about actually going into the office. There's a great new invention. It's called the web. You check your email from home or on the road. Come on. Let's get real here. These people are anti-sunshine. I am not letting them off the hook. It is months later. I do not have the documents. They have not been in compliance. Every step of the way has been a hindrance. Now we're at the point where they believe they can provide the documents. Why? Just because October 20th is, cutoff date for something? I don't know. I'm tired of this. It is contempt on their part for sunshine.
Right, and just to bring it back a little bit, just to bring it back, without getting to the adequacy of the response yet, because I have not seen the response yet.
Well, let me clarify. The response should have come months ago.
The response should have come months ago. I'm not going to disagree
you.
with you, and
Thank
I think the proper course of action, and what I suspect we're going to do, is recommend that a violation be made for failure to turn over those records. But the question that I have for you is, are you willing to work with President Breed's office to get a response from them? If it's an inadequate response, then we come back before the full task force. We have to show up and have to talk about it. But the incentive to get a good response, from the respondent's office, is if it's good enough, you don't got to show up, and then we can be okay here. We can move on from it.
I can answer your question.
This this is the first time I've seen this. I don't know if the respondent has seen this. I don't know what period this is supposed to cover. To me, it does look like it has some holes in it, but I don't want to go down the path of interrogating the adequacy of this response because it's not what was
To
requested.
come back to your question, do I want to comply? I have here before you the block. It's a printout image of London Breed's Twitter account paid for by the taxpayers blocking me. That's how they don't work with me. They have documents they want to share with me. mpetrellis@aol.com is available to receive whatever they want to send.
I guess that is the question. Do you want compliance? And I suppose it's kind of a silly question because of course you do. The question then is and I believe we've heard from the respondent's office. Are you willing to work to put together a response that is adequate enough so that we don't have to come back before the full task force? I guess that's the issue before us, and I'm content moving forward with a motion on that. I don't want to get into the adequacy of this response that I've seen just because it's not the record requested.
Just to give you context.
Sure.
Anti-sunshine attitude.
Right, and
So let's get to the motion. Let's take a vote.
No, public comment.
Public comment.
All right. Let's take a seat and make an intelligible motion.
And I would want to hear again from the respondent. I'm not going to address the allegation there that the office is anti-sunshine. I just don't want to get into that right this second. Looking at this a little further, it seems to me that there were actually different issues with item 2 and item 3.
You know what? You're absolutely right, and we've only addressed the item
3. Item 2 was really about the whole email thing for a year and a half, all of that.
Right.
I think the last I understood, we had a path forward and sort of a solution to the David Chu thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And were they providing records on a rolling basis?
I think they did a month at a time. I don't know if you got all of them, but you were good with that approach. Can you use the mic?
We can just take the items separately if we could just...
Well, we're hearing them together, so I just wanted to figure out, and we'll dispose of them separately. So you were good with the David Chu approach?
Yes.
Okay. And the David Campo stuff, that was also working out?
Yes.
Okay. And then for the London Breed email, not the calendars, but the email, is that on track?
Have not been provided.
Not been provided. Okay. Were we also doing that on a monthly basis, 1 month at a time, outgoing only? Same stuff?
My recollection is that Supervisor Breed's office said they would not do searching unless I gave them topics.
Okay.
As you see, something in your packet today is a printout of the city attorney's webpage with all of his aides, Tara Collins' emails. It was hundreds of emails on a variety of subjects. It was too big to send to me, so Matt Dorsey...
We saw that. That's old.
Right. I was using that as an example
Yeah.
to Breed's office about, hey, I requested all the emails. I have clearly identified the public documents I want. They have not provided them.
Okay, so this is new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that. Thank you very much. Let me go to the respondent. Can you talk to us for a second, maybe Connor?
Well, let's just review that what was requested. It was whittled down to outgoing emails by President Breed for the month of January 2014.
Right. That's
what we're
the
talking
last
about here.
Pass on
Okay.
that. Are we on the same page?
I honestly didn't know that was going to be my first question.
Okay.
Is that the current request?
It's in the order of determination, yeah. The June 29th, 2015 order of determination indicates that the request for records directed to President London Breed shall be refined to limit the request to sent emails by President Breed for the month of January 2014.
Did you want to comment on this?
That's before my time.
Right.
Okay.
It's 2014.
Yeah.
So the original request was substantially broader than that, I believe. And
Yes.
at the hearing, which we could not attend in June, apparently it was winnowed down to January of 2014.
Yep.
Outgoing emails?
Correct.
Okay. So that precedes Iris's arrival. I think we would have to review the volume of emails that this entails. The original request was thousands of emails. This, I imagine, is hundreds. So there clearly is some labor and process involved with parsing this and redacting the sensitive information.
Yep.
That is, at this point, the best answer I could give you, because in some respects, seeing this for the first time, I obviously saw it on the agenda, but it wasn't clear that that's what the request was at this point, because the original request that we received from Mr. Petrellis was far broader.
Okay, so this is what we're down to, and I think what we heard from Mr. Petrellis and what we heard at the full task force was the other offices that he has dealt with when he made a big request. They were like, this is too big. When he narrowed it to just a single month and outgoing only, it took them some time, but they were able to get through it.
And was that the case with Supervisor Campos's office?
Yes.
Okay. I imagine we're probably in the same situation.
Right. So that's not going to, if you're seeing this again now for the first time, that's not going to happen like today, but that is something that you could initiate and get to Mr. Petrellis. The question.
I shouldn't make promises on behalf of Iris.
Well, I'm saying the royal you.
Yes.
Yes. So I think on that item, our options are to. I think we found a.
The source of my frustration on this one is, who receives the order of determination at your office? What's the point of us putting this together if no one reads it? And why has the ball not been rolling on this? This is why we have to ask you to come back again and again, is because this has not been dealt with yet. I just want this to be dealt with, and so that we can be done with it and not drag you before us over and again. I know that's what you want on some level too, is to not be dragged before us, because this is not a fun experience, and it seems like a waste of time, though it is the essence of our public open process. Who receives the order of determination when it comes to your office?
So the answer to your question is that this came through as a violation of Section 6721E for failure to send a knowledgeable representative, which I assume would be with respect to the June meeting.
Yep.
That was why both Ms. Wong and I were here in August when these got continued, and we would have preferred to have settled it then as well. But we were not going to act upon this clarification to January of 2014 because we hadn't discussed it, and the determination that we were asked to respond to was the 6721E.
I don't know. I mean, I hear you. I don't really buy it. I think that what happened was nobody from your office reviewed this order of determination, and had you reviewed it, you would have seen that the request did not go away just by virtue of there being a 67.21E violation, but in fact there was still a request for these outgoing emails, and it was pretty clear in the order of determination. I think that the question remains then, how does an order of determination get processed in your office when you receive it? Who is processing it? Who was processing it before? Who's processing it now? And what assurance can we have that this is going to be dealt with expeditiously at this point, because this is a pretty old request, and again toward the idea of not bringing you back here again, not needing you to come back here.
Well, this one I think they will have to come back.
But perhaps, but let's
So
square one. Who receives these and how are they dealt with?
We all do.
Okay.
And both Ms. Wong and I review them, and we did review this carefully. Okay. But Mr. Petrellis has requested an enormous volume of material, and that has at times changed. And we were responding, as I said, to something that dealt with 6721E, which is a separate topic. This is why we were here in August. Mr. Petrellis wasn't. So I would have preferred to have dealt with it then as well, but such is not the case that we're presented with.
Yeah, but so compliance at amendments, what we do here is try to find compliance. We're not. It's kind of an impossibility to find compliance with your presence at a meeting that you did not attend. So it doesn't make sense that we're here to discuss just your non-attendance at the previous meeting. We are here to discuss compliance with the full request, which is clearly outstanding. So okay. Moving forward though, what's the assurance that we can get the ball rolling on January 2014 emails?
Our position in June was that the original request was overly broad. That would have been our position in August had this been heard at that time. Mm-hmm. Now that the request has been refined, I think we can follow the model laid out by Supervisor Campos's office and review these records and deliver them on a rolling basis.
Okay. And
can I hop in?
Sure.
So I appreciate that. I'm with that. The question in my mind about how to proceed for us is whether to, again, recommend to the full task force that we find a violation for not providing. I mean, for not providing the emails earlier, that there was some violation there, and send it back here for a compliance hearing to know that they've actually been provided, or some other course? Because I think at some point we need to find that there's been compliance with that request.
So
and I'm trying to figure out the mechanism to do that. This is a little different from our normal practice, but we're trying to find something that makes sense.
I think that there is a little bit of flexibility in our practice. And my recommendation, again, as with the calendar request, would be to say that we recommend a violation of failure to respond to a public records request in a timely manner, recommend that violation to the full task force, and in the interim, before that comes before the full task force, have both parties make progress on this request in compliance with this request, and with the high hope of obviating any appearance at the full task force hearing. If there's a means of responding to the request for outgoing emails for the month of January 2014 before this is on the agenda for the full task force, that seems to me like you wouldn't have to come here to address that. Again, I think that the complainant here wants compliance, and if you guys can make some progress on that and achieve compliance before this comes before the full task force, then maybe you don't have to appear here. So that's my recommendation again, and it would be, it would mirror that way that I think we should deal with the calendar request.
So my question is, when exactly did the violation occur? Because our position, and I think it's supported in the law, is that the original request was unduly broad, and that, in fact, was your finding with respect to his request on the other two disclosures. So that was our position in June, and I think I emailed that to the task force in advance of that meeting, even though we couldn't make it there.
Right, okay.
So we were never issued a disclosure request for the January 2014 emails. That did not come to us. It was agendized here that that's what this body recommended, but the ultimate finding that was delivered to us was 6721E for failure to send a knowledgeable representative.
Right.
Which is why we brought knowledgeable representatives to the August meeting and again tonight.
So again, setting aside 67.21E, and thank you for your presence here, but I do think that this is an order of determination from the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force that we made with input from the complainant at the time, and this, as an order of determination, it's not procedurally the same thing as a request for records, but it is nevertheless an order of determination for you to comply with this request, with this order of determination. So I guess technically speaking, if you want to be technical about it, we cannot find you in compliance with this order and determination because you have not complied with the order of determination. And that's what we're seeking to find right now, is compliance with this order of determination. So I guess procedurally, if we're being very precise, what we're finding here today is an inability to find compliance with this order of determination. We can recommend this to the full task force for a hearing as to, we're just kicking the ball down the road basically until compliance with the order of determination is found. And the only enforcement power we have, believe it or not, I think is, except for the Ethics Commission on certain things, is dragging you before us over and over and over again. This is the bully pulpit.
Mr. Chair, can I suggest that we...
I think it's pretty basic.
I understand. I would just suggest we ramp it down just a tad.
Sure.
And I say that as... never mind.
Sure.
The reason is, in this case, the order of determination only found a violation of 21E. So it's difficult to have a compliance hearing on a 21E violation when the respondent is actually present. I think what we're trying to do is actually get to the substantive issues, which we weren't able to address at the full task force because they weren't there. So that's why we're doing this a little backwards in that way. What we had done, and maybe this is more helpful to the respondent, what we had done with Mr. Petrellis's other request to the other offices, because he had made a broad request and there was difficulty in responding to it initially, is that we had discussion here with Wilson, with representatives from the other offices, and said, well, how can we narrow this? Can we try a month? Is it incoming and outgoing? Are there specific topics? And so we tried to craft a solution that they could make actionable, that they could work. And so in this case, that was how this was memorialized with respect to your office, was in the order. you wouldn't necessarily understand that had you not been there and had this discussion. So having now had this discussion,
Right.
I think yeah, and I see a hand out there. The question is how to proceed. I don't want to make this any more unduly burdensome than necessary. I think we've made clear what the request is and that we should just find a way to have that happen and to find a violation if there was a
Right,
violation.
and with all due respect, Member Pilpel, I think I charted a clear path forward with this one, and it is to comply with the request for emails, outgoing emails from January 2014, or to issue to us some communication as to why you think that's violation of the rule of reason. That request is too much, too bulky, and make that case to us. But
And to that end, I would note in our packet on page 21, there was an email from Carolyn Goosen, an aide to Supervisor Campos, saying that for February 2014, there were 37 emails sent from David.Campos at SFGov, and in looking through the sent email for the rest of the year, from March to December, there were 500 other emails. So for a single month, their office found 37 outgoing emails. You might have more or less, and they might have more or less content requiring review and redaction, but a single month's outgoing email from a supervisor is probably not thousands. It's hundreds or fewer.
I certainly hope we can hit the 37 number. That would make all our lives easier.
Okay.
So again, then I think that moving forward, what we do is recommend this to the full task force for violation. Technically, it's a violation of the order of determination, and it's an inability for us to find compliance today. But with the hope that they can comply with, the respondent can comply with the order of determination in advance of the full task force hearing, and generously I think I'm recommending that we don't have to come back if there is compliance. You guys, all you have to do is issue a statement to us, the full task force, through Victor, that there is no need to address this at the full task force, and we can dispose of it accordingly.
So I guess now where I am moving along here is, yes, we refer this back to the full task force. The question in my mind now is, do we recommend a further substantive violation on both this and the other one, or do we just let them go as already having found a 21E violation in both cases, not worrying so much about the substantive violation, but just asking that the substantive matters be responded to? And then the question is, do you think you can do this in 2 weeks, or should we put this to the full task force for December?
December.
Or we could split them and have one go for November and one for December.
The calendar one, I think, would be substantially easier. The calendar request.
Okay. So we could do the calendar one for November and the email for December? And hopefully you would get them done. If the email one takes less than 6 weeks, you would provide them as soon as possible and send us a note saying we provided it, da-da-da. So it doesn't have to wait 6 weeks.
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Are we headed to a place?
I think we're headed to a place.
Okay. We'll hear from Mr. Pagelis in a moment.
And then,
so again, do we want to find a substantive violation or just keep it with the 21E?
I think that the most that we can do is recommend a substantive violation to the full task force.
That makes
but
sense.
I do think it makes sense because
Okay. For the record.
For the record, exactly.
Okay. And Victor, is there a problem we've already found a 21E violation in both cases? If we were to recommend finding a substantive violation?
We'll treat it as a recommendation from the committee.
Right, but we can do that even though we've already found a thing. So it's like a
Yes.
subsequent thing with an added thing.
I don't believe that is a problem.
It's unusual, but hey, we can...
Just to my take on this matter,
Yeah.
the motion would be to find a violation of 6721 for failure to respond to a
Records
public
request.
immediate disclosure request in a timely manner. That will go before the full task force as a recommendation from the complaint committee. The standard practice in that event is that the parties are invited but not required to attend.
Right. Both that we would ask for a written submission by a week before.
If we receive documentation that the order has been complied with, the task force could close the file. If I receive word that it has not been complied with, the task force can reject the recommendation and hold a hearing on the matter.
Correct.
Right, although I suspect that we would still find the violation, and then the question is whether we would make another referral back here to find compliance, or if we would just end it there. saying
I don't think we can make any promises about what
Right.
the full task force is going to do, but
there's more work to do.
I suspect that if there's compliance with the order of determination, we can find as much at the full task force hearing. We don't necessarily need to adopt the substantive violation before the full task force, though I suspect we probably would to preserve the record. Yeah, I think that's exactly the procedure we're looking at.
Yes, the task force can either accept the recommendation and leave it at that, or they can schedule a new hearing if they believe compliance has not yet been achieved.
Right.
So can I try to craft a couple of motions here, and then we'll hear from both parties again in public comment? And
Please do.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Okay, so let me split this at this point to items 2 and 3, because they really are different. So for item 2,
Can the agenda?
for item 2, 15029, it's a recommendation to the full task force for the December meeting to find a violation of 67.21 for failure to respond to a public records request in a timely and or complete manner, and specifically repeating the first sentence of item 3 on the order for determination, that the request for records is limited to emails sent by President Breed from london.breed@sfgov.org for the month of January 2014.
Yes.
And we'll figure out how to write
And the
thing.
rest of it would be up to the full task force to decide how to
Right,
take over from that point.
Right, to either find
Find compliance and
conclude the matter,
Or
find a
schedule for
violation for the
additional
record, or hold a substantive hearing if there's reason to do so, or refer it for a further compliance hearing.
Yes.
So those are our options before the full task force. And encouraging the respondent to provide the records as soon as possible to the complainant, and to advise the task force, and ask the complainant to advise the task force if he's satisfied.
Correct.
Okay, so is that, it's complicated, but that's
That's the motion.
That's the motion.
I'll second that motion.
okay. Sorry, it's complicated. But it makes sense to the complainant and the respondent. Does it at least make sense? Okay, and then let's hear from both of you on the substance and public.
It doesn't entirely make sense.
Okay.
Does that mean that if we produce the records before this hearing takes place, that the finding of violation would go away?
I believe the violation stands either way. It's a matter of additional
I think we would
hearings.
likely find the violation, but conclude the matter and say, yes, there was a violation, but you've provided the records. There's no further follow-up needed. So that's your encouragement to. That's your encouragement to provide the records as soon as possible.
Okay.
So that there's no need for further follow-up here.
I don't mean to relitigate this point, but I'm unclear on when the violation occurred. If the request as originally submitted was unduly broad, which this body found itself, and then we were asked to send a knowledgeable representative in response, and we did not only in August but also this afternoon, I'm just unclear on where the violation occurred.
I'll be really direct and clear about it. The order of determination indicates that President Breed's office shall produce records of outgoing emails for the month of January 2014. Your failure to comply with that is substantively a violation of 67.21, a failure to produce public records. That is the violation that we are recommending recommending to the full task force. And so the violation of 67.21 is being recommended to the full task force to be made at the next meeting.
And it's actually 21E because the failure to respond within 5 days, and that we could refer to the AG or the DA. It's avoiding further process by redirecting the request, in a sense. Okay. I mean, the short answer is somewhere between June 29th, when this order issued, and today.
Somewhere between June 29th and what?
And today.
What is the...
You asked for a date when the failure occurred.
Okay, but...
Subsequent to the June 29th issuing of this order.
But during that period that you described was a calendared meeting to discuss this, to which we sent 2 knowledgeable representatives.
You didn't produce the records.
I'm actually going to echo the complainant, but you did not produce the records that are in the order of determination.
So what the order of determination says is the request for records directed to President London Breed, Board of Supervisors, shall be refined to limit the request to emails sent by President Breed for the month of January 2014. It says shall be refined. Go down to the end of the paragraph. A violation of the Sunshine Ordinance, Section 6721E, was found for failure to send a knowledgeable representative. So the takeaway to my reading is that the objection was with respect to 6721E, and the resolution is to send a knowledgeable representative, which we have now done twice with 2 knowledgeable representatives. So there is no directive that you shall disclose the emails from January 2014. The language here says that the request shall be refined, and the implication is that will be discussed at a subsequent meeting.
I don't think that you have to agree with our finding here for us to recommend it to the full task force. And frankly, I see a failure to respond to the records request, and that's what we're recommending to the full task force.
I agree that I don't have to agree with it, but I would prefer if the facts agreed with it.
We all could have done this a little better, I think, all the way around here. The language could have been written differently. I think perhaps there was some shorthand used here. The task force, in finding the 21E violation, I think wanted to not continue the hearing so as to have a substantive hearing at that point. We could have just continued the matter, waited till you appeared, had the substantive hearing, and found at that time what we're now recommending as a 6721 violation for failing to provide the records even in a limited fashion. But we didn't do that because we were trying to move the thing along. Could we have done it differently? Yes, we could have. I think at the end of the day, if you understand what the request is now, if you provide the records, we'll find a violation. I don't think it's going to matter that much. I think we're just trying to get Mr. Patelis the records and get out of this thing as best we can. I know it's not the greatest for you. It's not the greatest for anyone. Okay, does that help you a bit? Yeah, we'll hear from you. You understand?
It doesn't help because I think you're finding a violation that occurred because of unclear direction from your own body.
I disagree. And you know what? You can come in here guns blazing, but frankly, you didn't respond to the records request. You didn't respond to the refined records request that's reflected in the order of determination. And I think that's where the buck stops. Really, we could go back and forth about this all day. I understand that you're parsing through the language in here in a very litigious manner, and if, that's your prerogative, but I think that our intent is fairly clear from this order of determination that the request, we limited it in spite of your absence at that meeting to make it easier for you to respond to outgoing records from January 2014. That request, that refined request as the task force refined it to help your office, was not responded to, and frankly, I don't believe you guys knew that it was refined prior to coming to this meeting. So look, that's where I'm at. I think I'm saying it a little bit differently than Member Pilpel, but my patience is thin, and I just want to close this and move on. So I think that there's an opportunity for you here to respond to the request and not have to come back here again, and I think that's the best we're going to get today.
I will happily take that opportunity.
Great, thank you. So the motion's been made, it's been seconded. Is there public comment on the motion? We can give the complainant an opportunity to respond.
Before we get to public comment. in case that changes.
Did you want to make a motion on the other matter, or are we going to handle them separately?
We'll take it separately,
Okay.
but the other one's going to mimic this, I suspect.
Yeah.
I didn't read the files, so I don't know exactly what's going on here. I just know it's a repetitive pattern from London Breed's office. I know other people have come in here with similar complaints. It's just the comment that you can file complaints every month on the same issue kind of is defeating the purpose of the Sunshine Ordinance. I think that Mr. Petralis is entitled to his files. He's come here. He'll probably have to come back another time to try and get them. It seems like he made a good faith effort, and he should get the records he wants.
Not public comment.
Well, I just wanted to give the complainant one more opportunity because we heard a lot from the respondent.
All right. Why don't we give the
Another minute or
complainant an opportunity to address us? I think that's fine.
I'm Michael Petralis. First of all, you have just received a verbal taste of the attempts by London Breed's representatives to get around the spirit and letter of this law. I wish to address the matter of the August meeting. Regardless of the meeting not taking place, the documents, the emails have not been produced. Okay. The other thing is I would like for a date, maybe 2 dates, inserted into your motion when Breed's office has to give me a response. Hopefully a response with the requested public records. As you have just seen in the past 20 minutes or so, all that dancing around is what they're concerned with. Setting a date, let's say, of this Friday, of getting me something in writing of this is our search process, this is when you're going to expect a response, this is what we may expect if we find 30 outgoing emails. They need to be nailed down to a date. The last point I wish to make is that this committee and the full task force needs to set time limits in terms of how long the complainant goes, how long the respondent goes, and how long you all are going to ask questions. This has now taken up more than an hour of our time, and I think if we had time limits, we would cut through a number of the BS that comes from certain offices, and we'd get a resolution sooner, and we'd all be happier.
So
Thank you.
just on that point, I'm not going to recommend a specific timeline. I'm not going to include that in the motion. I don't think it's needed. Though I will recommend to Ms. Wong, who I believe will be responding to this request, that in the interest of resolving this amicably and expeditiously, that it would behoove both parties to work this out as soon as possible. And that goes for the complainant as well. I know that there's a lot of darts flying and a lot of flames to throw, but really, I think that there's a means of resolving this short of, drawing our guns, that, I'm really encouraging to set aside the political animosity and really get an amicable resolution to this as soon as possible. I really beg of you. That way, I think we have a better chance of not coming back here again.
I would concur with that. In practical terms, I think I would be looking for some response from the complainant and/or respondent by, not the last Wednesday because it's the day before Thanksgiving, but like the Monday or Tuesday before Thanksgiving, so as to impact our December packet. But in practical terms, again, sooner is better. So if it takes 2 or 3 weeks to go through this, if that's, if President Breed's office can send us send the records to Mr. Petralis in 2 or 3 weeks and say, here they are, or here are some, and we're getting the rest of them to you on a rolling basis, but that's all concluded in 2 or 3 weeks. And if a note comes to us saying that we've provided all of them to Mr. Petralis, and if Mr. Petralis sends us an email saying, I've got them all, it took a while, but thank you, and I got them, we'll put that in the file. That'll be before the full task force for December, and I think that would make it more likely that the task force would just take the recommendation and end the matter. If by the December meeting there isn't or doesn't appear to be compliance, then we may have further proceedings. And I think it's our desire all the way around to try to avoid that.
Correct.
So I think we've made it all clear here, and I'm good with the motion.
As clear as it's going to be. Well, why don't we vote on the motion and then dispose of
Then we'll go on to item 3.
Item number 2 as well.
Yeah.
On
That
that motion, Member Pelpel.
Aye.
Pelpel, aye. Washburn, absent. Chair Hepner.
Aye.
Hepner, aye. The motion passes.
Okay.
Okay, so as to the other matter, do you want to make a motion similar to the one made?
Yep, one moment. Task Force, November meeting. Okay, so. Okay, so for item 3, it's a recommendation to the full task force for the November meeting. Also to find a violation of 67.21 for failure to provide the calendar, the redacted version of whatever calendar existed for the subject period. And I'm trying to find that now. February, help me.
It's February 1st through April 12th, 2015.
Okay. And I think what we heard from the respondent is that they think they can do that for the November meeting, which means we would need to have something, by next week, Victor?
October 28th.
Okay. So a week and a day, a week from tomorrow? Does that seem realistic? I'm asking the respondent.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So other than that, same scheme. So this would be November, the other one was December.
Right.
That's my motion.
And I'll second that motion. Is there public comment on that motion?
Difficult to follow. So if they're going to give over the documents by the next meeting, is that what it is? Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And I just want to be sure that there's understanding on both sides as to what we're asking for on this one. Complainant Petrellis?
Right.
Respondent? Yes? Everyone's okay.
I'll advise Ms. Wong again that if there's any question about what should be included in the calendar, what an appropriately crafted calendar looks like. One example that I know is out there was a response to Mr. Petrellis's request to similar calendar records from Supervisor Avalos' office. Those records were produced in a very efficient and timely manner and included a pretty extensive record of the calendar of the items that were required to be kept in the public calendar, or admittedly there was some ambiguity where that was a requirement then. There is certainly no ambiguity now as to whether that public calendar should exist. I would also recommend reading through the new calendar requirements. I know that those did not apply, and they do not apply retroactively to the period of February 1 through April 12, 2015.
But it's good.
But I think that it's a good indicator of what kind of information, is being sought here. And to the extent we're working together on this and not just sitting in our silos and providing the bare minimum, read that through, and if you can provide some of that information to the complainant, I think this will be resolved more effectively.
And you have the city attorney's guidance on implementation of the thing?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Before we vote on this, I might just note to Mr. Petrellis, if you have gathered calendar information from various offices, not today, but at some future meeting, or if you want to correspond with the task force and give us some examples of, in your opinion, better calendars and not as good calendars, amongst the supervisors, and for that matter, from other department heads. You seem to be a big guy on the calendar thing. I'd be interested in who you think is, or less on who's doing a better job, but sort of like what are good calendar entries. That would be helpful for us, I think.
I'm starting a calendar access calendar access project of making monthly requests to the 10 supervisors I can correspond with. The 11th one has vendetta against me, but that's another matter. Anyway, I have received 10 calendars from the supervisors for the month of September. Would you like to view them yourselves to see?
No, I'm just interested if you have like particular examples, a few pages here or there that you think are good or less good. That would just be interesting.
One or two, I'll send along.
Okay. And if you want a tagline for your project, because 12 months aren't enough. There you go. I'm good with the motion.
Okay, second. Yep.
On that motion?
That happened already.
Member Pilpil.
Aye.
Pilpil, aye. Washburn. Washburn absent. Chair Hepner.
Aye.
Hepner, aye. The motion passes. Next on the agenda, file number 15067. This is a new complaint.
Public comment. It's past 5 o'clock.
That is not listed on this agenda at 5 o'clock.
I can't wait. I gotta go. It's not fair. It's traditionally 5
Mr.
o'clock.
Chair, can we just take item 9 out of order and hear public comment?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Let's just, yeah.
I just want to express my frustration in a very different manner as Michael Petrellis as being a watchdog, how much time it takes, how exhausting it can be, and how frustrating it can be to simply, monitoring or watching over. For me, it's one department. For him, it seems to be many. Just to ensure maybe that things are going correctly, that it's very frustrating because to have to file the same complaint over and over again is difficult. In my opinion, it seems that he knows or he's dealt with many of these supervisors, and these documents should be supplied on a rolling basis. It should be kind of standard. And this issue of, well, they went on recess and there was no reply whatsoever, it kind of doesn't make too much sense. I mean, maybe it's going beyond to try and contact them on Twitter. It could be construed as something else, but I think when somebody makes the kind of attempts that he's made over a period of time, I can appreciate how frustrating it is.
Any other public comment? General public comment? There being no further public comment, we move on to item number 4. This is a new complaint, file number 15067. Complaint filed by Mike Petrellis against President London Breed, Board of Supervisors, for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.21 and 67.25 for failure to respond to immediate disclosure requests in a timely and/or complete manner. And I believe that I have listed in my summary, the complainant has requested a copy of President Breed's email for the period of March 1st, 2015 through April 23rd, 2015 on specific topics listed in my summary.
Do we need a motion to find jurisdiction?
Yes, we do.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any public comment regarding jurisdiction? There being none, on the question of jurisdiction, Member Pelpel.
Without objection.
Without objection, with Member Washburn being absent.
So, all right, let's just proceed with this one. Why don't we have the complainant tell us your version of the facts?
I requested clearly identified public documents, the February, March, April calendars in electronic format for London Breed. That's what I'm
Email.
looking at. Oh, excuse me.
Email.
Yeah, we're looking at email requests sent on April 24th, 2015.
Right.
That is page, I believe,
E6, among other places.
Okay, I'm looking at Iris Wong's response from Friday, May 22nd on page P93 of your big catalog here. Record, I mean. She writes that she has received my notes. Since you cannot narrow down your request, I unfortunately cannot fulfill it with the current criteria. The sent emails are clearly identified public records. The burden should not be on me to say, oh, I want to see if she discussed her friendship with certain developers, or if she's going to be attending a fundraiser. Whatever the topics are that she has sent from her taxpayer-funded email account, I'd like to see. I think they're public records that more of us should see, and I have not received the documents.
So
I believe they're in violation.
okay. All right. I have a number of follow-up questions for you, but why don't we stick to the order of things, and let's have a member of the respondent's office. Is there anybody here to provide facts or evidence on behalf of the complainant? Seeing nobody, let's have the respondent's office address this complaint.
Good afternoon, Iris Wong, Legislative Aide to Supervisor President Breed. So I also worked with City Attorney John Givner and then Records Manager Wilson Ng to respond to Mr. Petrellis' request. And as I listed, when I first responded to him on May 18th, I had said that there are approximately 1,000 emails responsive to his criteria, and I asked him to limit them either by a specific days, a given week, or limit the subjects, because he had listed any and all staff emails to as a police, sheriff, fire, health, housing authority, etc. And I just would like him to limit the topics or timing.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I have...
Facts in support.
Are there any facts? Is there anybody present to provide facts or evidence in support of the respondent? Seeing nobody, let's... this is with the committee now. I'll just throw in my commentary here from my review of the file. I am... somewhat sympathetic to President Breed's office here. I'm just looking at the scope of topics that Mr. Petrellis, you sent to President Breed's office, and these are, very tenuously related at best list of topics. You are naming specific topics in an effort to be specific, but in listing so many and so many unrelated topics, you are in fact not being specific, and in fact asking for a universe of emails. And I can't help but think that you're just ultimately trolling President Breed's office here. And this list of topics is just, I would be exasperated if I saw that list. I would just be, I would look at this and think, look, Mr. Petrellis is screwing with us again. That's what I would think if I saw that request. And frankly, I'm looking at Ms. Wong's response here, and I noticed that it is an IDR request on April 24th, and the response didn't come until, actually, there seems to be something out of order here. But okay, leaving the timeline aside, the response from Ms. Wong is actually very conciliatory, and it appears to be exactly what I'm trying to get you guys to do. It's an honest attempt to try and figure out if we can work together to try and make this easier to respond to. And it's just like, if there is an unwillingness to meet them halfway there, then, it ends up with us, and we have a pile of junk to deal with. And we have, again, another situation where you and President Breed's office are in your respective silos lobbing bombs at each other. And in fact, I respect Ms. Wong's attempt here to be conciliatory and try and figure it out with you. So that's my common sense perspective on this.
Could I?
Yes, Member Pilpal.
Mr. Petrellis, you can hang out for a second. To Ms. Wong, I'm actually trying to deal with the facts on this one and on the other one and all of them. Never
Thank
mind.
you, Mr. Popo.
It's okay. For the subject period, which was, remind me here, March 1 through April 23rd, your response that of about 1,000 emails, can you be more specific? Were there in fact 1,000 or more outgoing emails during that time period?
There were close to 1,000, yes.
Okay, from the supervisor's account during that period?
Correct.
Okay, not necessarily lengthy email. I mean, they could be short, but she apparently sends out a lot of email, yes?
Correct.
Okay, so that's different from our experience with the other offices. That's fine. Okay. You did receive Mr. Petrellis's request with the list of topics, and even with that list of topics, with that almost 1,000 emails, you weren't able easily, quickly, or even not easily and not quickly to call that set of 1,000 emails down to fewer?
I've worked with City Attorney John Givner on this, and when I had first sent him that email saying that there are approximately 1,000 emails, he did then advise me to ask Mr. Petrellis to limit those topics. Or
had you already communicated to John that you had already gotten a list of topics, and so it wasn't just an unrestrained request for records during a period of time?
Yes.
But it was both a period and a topic filter, if you will?
Yes.
And he suggested that you ask for a further narrowing?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is consistent with my sort of inclination from looking at this list. I mean, it's everything with the kitchen sink. The only way it could be broader is if it was a request for trips to the moon that she's made. It's a long, diverse list of.
I mean, it seems to me that it reflects perhaps the interest that Mr. Petrellis has, and he's entitled to be interested in certain issues and not others, but whatever.
It's practically impossible to implement. His list actually almost makes the request more difficult. For example, how do you find emails related to LGBT people? Is every email with my name on it suddenly subject to this request because I'm gay? I mean, this is actually more difficult.
I didn't know that.
We're learning things. I mean, I am thankful to agree with Chair Heppner on this one. This list is preposterously broad, and the specificity it provides actually makes it even more difficult.
Okay.
Please respond.
Yeah, we'll hear from you in a bit. We know you're there.
Let's set some time limits already, please.
I don't think there's a time limit on our own fact-finding mission. So when it comes to responses, and
we're doing what we can here to figure this out.
So we're all here this evening because of you. So
No, because you guys.
All right.
Everybody, let's.
The contempt from that.
Mr. Petrellis?
Please. Thinking of some other approaches to this, I'm just going to use the 1,000 number. It's somewhat less, but approaching 1,000. If you were to take these particular topics and go through the set of 1,000, a reasonable amount of time every day and say, okay, let's find those items that are related to the police and go through those and redact them, provide them, and then go on to the sheriff and, go through each topic. Is that a course that could be embarked on?
So the practical way that we typically respond to these is to search in, at least the way that I do, is to search in Outlook for whatever the operative word is. So if someone says, I want all of your interaction with somebody from Barbary Coast Consulting, for example, well, that's an easy one to comply with. I enter the name, I search for it, there is a group of records. To say I want everything related to ethics,
right,
I have no idea how to search for that.
Or if you ask for police, it might be coded as SFPD. So
it's incredibly broad and almost impossible to implement.
Okay, I understand. I'm just trying to think of ways to sort of work through it.
I mean, I think the way to work through it would be to ask the complainant what he's ultimately after. If it's to aggravate and inconvenience the president of the board's staff, then I think this achieves that goal. If he has a topic or a topic of records that he's interested in, we're happy to provide it. But this does not lead us in that direction.
So here's the flip side of this coin, and I know I made overtures of understanding to your office, but would it have been a different complaint had it come to us and just said, hey, I want all outgoing emails for the month of March 2015? I mean, we just adjudicated a complaint that asked for all outgoing emails from January 2014, and we said, you know what, make an attempt, go for it, you guys, figure it out. And this, though, it does have a laundry list of topics, is, the maximum that could retrieve for Mr. Petrellis is all outgoing emails from that address for that period of time, which we just said that you guys should comply with.
Can I just try a very similar version of that? If the request were just for a month, and if you said, we can't respond to that tomorrow, but we will deal with that on a rolling basis, right? We will allocate 15 minutes a day to searching, and as things become available, we'll give you today's pile of stuff, right? And even if that takes more than a day, more than 2 weeks, a month, whatever period of time it takes, on a rolling basis, is that something that you could do? I think we're asking similar things.
Yeah, I mean,
without regard to topics, just a set of email for a period of time.
There are departments in the city, the clerk's office, for example, that have staff members dedicated to responding to sunshine requests and public records requests, and that is what they do on a full-time basis. Mm-hmm. Supervisors have a little bit over 70,000 constituents, and they have 3 staff members to serve those 70,000 constituents. So what you are suggesting is that one of those 3 staff members should spend a portion of every single day responding to this request from one individual. In other words, that one individual's request is more important than the 70,000 other people who need services, who need muni to work, who need police protection.
You're getting to the merits of the entire sunshine ordinance, and I understand that this is, I totally understand where you're coming from, and that frustration is something that we just have to mediate and march through, because we have few options for getting around the sunshine ordinance as it was passed in 1999.
So I'm not relitigating the sunshine ordinance. What I'm requesting or suggesting is that we try to find what the ultimate goal here is with this request, and fine-tune it to the point that it's something that can be done in a shorter period of time and with less staff resources, because those staff resources come from something else.
Which is exactly why I think that Ms. Wong's response here was appropriate, and I thought a nice effort to try and find that ultimate goal. Now, your office and the complainant here have reached such a fever-pitched, awful dynamic between each other that Ms. Wong's attempt to find that ultimate goal was disregarded entirely, and that's why we're here. So I think I'm trying to, play mediator here and try to find, a way for you guys, a path forward for your office and Mr. Petrellis, where you can look at that response, Mr. Petrellis, from Ms. Wong and say, you know what, I see where she's coming from. Let me work with her a little bit and figure that out, and not be pushing the boundaries of the Sunshine Ordinance at every single turn, and simultaneously, aggravating a relationship with President Breed's office when they are very visibly, in their own silo here. Am I making sense? Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. I think what I'm trying to do makes sense. Well,
I'd like to hear from Mr. Petrellis in a moment. I should also note, Connor, as someone who was on the redistricting task force, I tried very carefully to make all the districts equal, and so that you were serving the same number of people as the other offices. But I hope I did it.
I think ours is growing faster than some of the other. District 6 is fastest. But
hey, if I could do it differently,
we'll bring you back in 2020.
Happy. Yeah, I shouldn't volunteer, but we'll talk then. Can we hear? Actually, could we turn it to Mr. Petrellis? I thought I understood that these were your topics that you were interested in. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there some other way that you can think of or suggest that we could get at this information, or is
No.
there? Okay.
I believe that precedent has already been set with the city attorney's office for turning over all the emails. Now, I asked for 3 months. Maybe I can whittle it down to 1 week. Let's say the first week of March, all outgoing emails on any subject for March.
Okay.
What would happen then, okay? In any event,
we can ask that.
First, make it broad, because I want to look at everything. And they say, no, that's too broad. Then I send a list. I'd like to hear from the chair at some point. Let me finish, please.
Yeah.
I've not interrupted you. I'd like to hear from the chair from some point if I should drop off the African Americans, the police misconduct, evictions, toilets, or LGBT. What is the limit then for topics I can ask? Oh, as long as it's getting easier and easier for them, then we'll just keep as much of London Breed's emails to ourselves as possible. She's the president of the board. I want to see everything she is sending out. She is setting an incredible agenda for this town. Now, if her 3 staffers are not enough, I'd like to suggest she get the interns. There are plenty of interns running around this building who would be glad to help with a chore like that. And yes, it's a chore, but so is participating in democracy. And finally, when the Associated Press started asking for Hillary Clinton's emails at the State Department, they didn't ask about gays in Uganda and death penalty things in Uganda. They didn't break it down to Ukraine being attacked by the Russians. The AP said every email.
Of course, in response to a pretty serious allegation that she had,
and we, regardless
engaged
of
in
Benghazi
impropriety
and everything else, the point has been made, and she has complied with not only turning over emails, but the server. That is what I believe a public official in San Francisco should look toward in terms of complying with my request for identifiable records.
And, I think it's a noble pursuit in theory, and we are left yet with the practical measure of how to mend this awful relationship. And, frankly, I'm becoming less sympathetic to both sides, so maybe Member Pilpel has an idea of how to continue here.
I want to ask one more question to Mr. Petralis, and then I'll go back to the respondents. You keep referring to the city attorney as a model, and in some ways maybe they are, and in some ways maybe they aren't, or that it's proportional in a way. The city attorney has, 175, 200 attorneys, support staff. They're not a large department. They're a small to medium-sized department, but they're a department with a lot of staff. The supervisor's office, in addition to the supervisor, has 3 aides. So, and they certainly don't have as much email as the entire city attorney's office or the entire MTA. They have a limited amount of stuff, but they also have a limited amount of staff. So bearing in mind some of that proportionality, how, other than limiting the amount of time, and you suggested a week, and I'm going to ask them about a week in a moment, what else can you think of that is more proportional to the size of their office and their ability to respond?
I can't.
That's all you can think of? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's fair.
So, and here's the thing too, that if
But then it may take a while.
If he
That's
agrees,
the flip side. Okay.
I understand that.
And you're patient. So you would rather be patient and have things take longer as long as you get the stuff eventually.
Yes.
Okay. And if they allocate a reasonable amount of time to doing their diligent work on it, you're happy to be patient.
Yes.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you. Can I go back to the respondent? From what we just heard, either, both of you, somebody? Bueller?
We were conferring.
I appreciate that. It sounds like Mr. Pagelis is not willing to narrow further, but is willing to be patient. So if we could either try a week, or and as part of that, if you can allocate a reasonable amount of time, and I understand that means time away from other constituent work, time away from other kinds of work, but it's a request, and we have to find some way to deal with it. talk to us about how that would work. I mean, I'm trying to find a practical solution here.
I mean,
it's not easy.
We regard it, and I think the interpretation from the city attorney's office regards it as an overly broad and burdensome request.
So
We would be happy to work with him if he refines it, but he appears unwilling to do so.
So let's say for that, just like we did in the other case, if we refine the request for March 1 through March 7th, 1 week only of 2015 inclusive, just that week, and not limit it to topics, just say everything in the outgoing mail for just the first week of March, whatever that yields in terms of count, and whatever amount of time you can spend reasonably to go through it. We understand it'll be on a rolling basis. It'll require review and redaction as necessary. Is that something that you could do? I mean, not today, but tell us about how doable that is.
I think that would be possible. We
Okay.
limit it by 1 week, and I may not be able to send it out every week just because of...
No.
Just the 1 week. Let's try the 1 week first, and then and I would encourage you to track how much time and effort it requires to do that, and let's see how that works.
Yes, I would echo that. That's a super important point. Track and log the amount of time you spend producing 1 week of email.
No more, no less.
If you're going to try and invoke the rule of reason, it helps us understand whether that's an appropriate route to go down if we know how much time it's taking you to redact X number of emails and produce them.
And if some of that work, if you would be aided in that work with Brent or John Givner or others for various reasons, feel free to avail yourself of those resources. I mean, I'm trying to find a practical way to de-escalate the matter and to provide the records.
I genuinely appreciate your efforts, and I think if you're saying the first week of March,
Yeah.
all outgoing emails, let me go ahead and make a promise on behalf of Iris. I think that is something we could accommodate, and we could track the amount of effort.
And it'll take some time. This is
Yeah.
not going to be tomorrow, but in the next week or two.
And we're also
whatever it
walking
takes,
out of
you
this
know.
meeting with a variety of other homework
Yes.
assignments that have now landed on Iris's desk. So
Yes.
I would imagine this would be at the bottom of that list, but it is doable.
Do you have a preference?
Well, we had already talked
You'll
about this
figure-
going to the December. Oh wait, no, that was previous.
No, that was the
Excuse
previous
me.
one.
I mean, I think, if the impression here is that we are being unreasonable or standoffish,
No,
I get that. That may be accurate, and I think Mr. Heppner's comment that he's losing sympathy for both parties is perfectly fair. But the fact of the matter is, we come into work every single day with 70,000 people who need a variety of services, and to the extent we are satisfying Mr. Petrellis's angst or curiosity, it is taking away from legitimate needs that other people have.
And hopefully there aren't any more shootings in District 5, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. I get all that. I'm just trying to creatively figure out how to solve the problem.
And I think your solution is one that we could accommodate.
So why don't we try that?
I would like to see how much time it takes. Yeah, and I would like to see,
In terms of how, I mean, this is sort of
the volume of a week of outgoing email on these topics, how much time it takes to redact them. Those numbers would be so helpful for us to determine whether this is a proper invocation of the rule of reason.
And my sense, and I could be wrong, if the supervisor is sending out that much email, which is more than other offices, I would suspect that they're probably short. I can't imagine that they're all long missives to everybody. So although you may have a higher count, I suspect that the amount of time spent to review and redact is going to be less per item. I could be wrong. So, and your experience will be different from that of other offices. I mean, it's not... Every request is different. You can't say, I made a calendar request or I made a request for a month of emails from one person, and so somebody else is going to be exactly the same. No, they're going to be very different. So that's why I think we're interested in your experience going through this process. The next question before us, I think, is whether we recommend finding a violation again and seeing that with this narrowed time frame, if the office can comply, and if we're going to do that, again, I would think maybe not November, maybe December on this one. I mean, because ultimately we have a complaint before us, so we have to figure out what to do with that.
I mean, I suggest we refer it to the December meeting without recommendation and let the task force deal with it.
Well, if If we do it without recommendation, then we would have to hold another hearing there. And
No,
go
I
through
mean,
all
I think that the recommendation that we send is a recommendation of a violation of the failure to respond to an IDR request in an appropriate amount of time. I don't believe that this was.
And I'm not reading
Our
any
memorandum
ill
is
intent
in
into
fact
those.
our memorandum on this is in fact inaccurate, because it indicates that the complainant sent an IDR on April 24th, 2015, and that Ms. Wong sent her response on March 18th, which actually predates the request. So I believe that must.
It was May
Yeah,
18th.
that's right. It's May 18th, not March 18th. So, in any event, an IDR on April 24th should be responded to within 24 hours, and that response can include an invocation of a 10-day extension. And because that was not met, I think that I think is a per se violation of the Sunshine Ordinance.
So it was actually sent, page 96 of the packet, among other places, it was sent Friday afternoon at 4:51. So my view is that it should have been responded to by 5 p.m. on Monday, the 27th.
So this original IDR was sent directly to Supervisor Breed and landed in her junk folder, where we found it after the complaint was issued.
It said that it was
And
sent to you as well.
It also went to you.
Yeah, and on April 24th, I was in Iceland.
Did you have a nice time?
I did.
Okay.
So there's got to be a mechanism still for. I mean, this is again, we, as a blanket, just very basic matter. We can't put the burden on the complainant to make sure that his IDR is received. We need to set up a new account, a Sunshine account, that an intern, is checking regularly and forwarding appropriately. This needs to be received by somebody. It's not an excuse to not have received it.
I don't know if we went through this with your office. We did with I forget who it was with Campos. Is there an auto reply that comes from Supervisor Breed if you send an email there that says, thank you for your message? I get a lot of messages. I'll get back to you if I can. If you have a Sunshine request or a public records request, you may want to send this to Breed staff at SF.gov. Thanks.
Not currently, but I have discussed with her to
Okay.
start something like that. So
if you do that, that would help. If something goes to Breed staff, all three of you read it? Or somebody gets it?
yes, and I also
Okay.
have recently advised Mr. Petrella to send all Sunshine requests to me directly because
Okay.
I do handle them from our office.
Okay. So if some of those things are in the works, I think that helps. In terms of this one, again, my sense is that we should probably recommend finding a violation, send it to the December meeting, and then hope that we get compliance before then so that you don't have to show up, and hopefully Mr. Petrellis will be happy. And if the 1 week isn't that burdensome, he can make a subsequent request for additional weeks or however he wants to characterize it. And it sounds like your best approach is not to limit it by topic, but it's to limit it by time, and then just give them the time to respond. Sounds great. Are we headed to a place?
Yeah.
Yes, and that would work for me, and that
Okay.
was actually my original request to him to limit it to a certain week. So
Okay.
Right.
San Francisco, weekly. Never mind.
Okay, so let's try and because this is the complaint committee, let's hear briefly from the respondent if they have any additional comment to close their case, and the complainant, and then we'll craft a motion out of this.
Getting better.
Sunshine, sunshine, sunshine. It's really the essence of life. And I believe in big requests. Thank you very much for considering this matter. I've noted here that I will send an amended request to a number of people at Breed's office for the outgoing emails from Breed for March 1st through 7th, 2015. And I'm really happy that I can help them be more responsive to the 7,000 people in her district.
70.
Is that what? I'm glad I'm helping them set up another email account or set up a automatic response in her replies when she gets some emails, whether they're for requests or whatever. It'll be one step forward to making the supervisor more responsive. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's.
We normally hear from the.
Yeah, ordinarily we do hear from the respondent first. Closing remarks from the respondent. Are there any closing remarks from the respondent?
I just want to offer a general comment, which is that I think this body, and maybe the Board of Supervisors as well, needs to think about what the compelling public interest here is for the use of staff resources and ultimately city resources. Mm-hmm. And I don't say that in response to these cases, but in response to the dynamic that we often see, and I'm sure you both see as well. I know of a particular case where a city employee was involved with a conflict with her landlord, and the landlord knew that she worked for the city and made a sunshine request against her, basically just to get personal information to use in the process of the landlord proceeding. And I think there are issues here that need to be considered. It's not just a question of whether or not this is burdensome. It's whether or not it serves a compelling public interest and whether or not it's taking resources from things that may be more compelling than what we're currently doing.
And I appreciate that. I really do. I think that it gets to the point of what the rule of reason is all about. And is this diverting? Again, it goes a little bit more to the burdensome point. But is this a diversion of resources from public staff that is inappropriate and therefore contrary to the public interest? I think that is actually our best mechanism for really finding where the line is here between overly burdensome and not is through the data that you can provide us, how long it takes for you to respond to this, just the metrics of it. And frankly, we've never really gone down that path as far as I know, at least since my time on the body.
Not really. I mean,
we've never really investigated how much time it takes to respond to these things. I would appreciate that information. It would help inform our conversation about the rule of reason a whole lot more. And at the end of the day, I would hope that what we see here is a small reflection of the wider universe of sunshine requests, that there are a lot of sunshine requests that are very intelligible and easy to respond to, and there are some that are a little bit harder to respond to, and those may end up in this body. So, I would hope that there is some value here to the public interest.
I also appreciate that. I don't want to broaden the scope of this particular item, but I hear the points that you're making. I'm thinking very carefully about particularly immediate disclosure requests and the calendar requirements, some of the things that are specific to the Sunshine Ordinance that we could recommend amendments, greater, lesser, different, and we saw some of that play out at the board on the calendar requirement over the summer. But I think we need to examine the ordinance more broadly. What are the burdens that it places? Are they proximate to public interests? Are some of these a little askew, et cetera? And I think it needs some tweaking. It's been a long time, and it's pretty rigid. A lot has happened in terms of electronic records, audio, video, things like that aren't fully countenanced in the thing. But at the same time, I just want to note that other than things like IDRs and the calendar requirement that are specific to sunshine, the rest of the stuff just flows from state law. So all of the problems that all the issues that we address in terms of burden, it's really no different from anyone asking, the city of Oakland for all of their emails from the mayor's office, or, the Santa Clara Water District, all of the, and all of these places have their own controversies and their own followers and whatnot. The public policy in this state is that public records are assumed to be public, and with limited exceptions, they're to be made available. That places, the public interest at a high level and places a burden on the government to provide. It's both good and bad, and it's kind of the way that we live. I'm happy to talk more now or some other time about it, and I think that these are important questions that don't necessarily reach to Hillary Clinton's email, but do get to broad public policy interests.
And the thing that's interesting is that in my experience, this body doesn't see a lot of complaints coming from members of the press.
Right.
Members of the press.
We used to a lot
And
more.
it's-
We
and-
haven't recently.
And it's good that you don't, because I think members of the press have a specific compelling public interest. They want to cover a topic, and they want the records to address that topic, and they're absolutely entitled as the fourth estate. They should have those records, and I think that aspect of the law is functioning well, and we certainly in our office 100% respect their objective to find those records and are extremely responsive. What's frustrating and what is diverting the public resources is people who are using this law for either harassment purposes or punitive purposes, and who consume staff resources that could otherwise be dedicated to public good.
And I would suggest that that's a number of people. I don't think it's a large number. I think it's actually a very small number, but I think that small number of people consumes a hugely disproportionate amount of resources, both in terms of requests and complaints that we see.
With very, very little to show for it.
Yeah, and I'm not associating Mr. Petralis with that one way or the other.
I will.
But,
Yes.
okay.
I'll just add, Mr. Petralis, that you are a blogger journalist in your own right, and there's I appreciate your work in that regard on occasion.
Matter at hand.
Yes, I think we can move forward
Thank
to
you.
a motion.
With the matter at hand, I will so move. One moment. Recommendation to the task force at the December meeting to find a violation of 67.21 and 67.25A for failure to respond to an immediate disclosure request in a timely and/or complete manner.
I'll second that motion.
And it's, again, with the same understandings as the other, that if we can get something by late November, in advance of the December meeting, from either or both sides saying that the request has been complied with, then we would likely find the violation and move on. And we will be clear in the order that the request has been narrowed to the week of March 1st through March 7th, 2015. Mr. Petralis, you should feel free to follow up as well, but we will put that in the order, and that'll take a few days for us to work through.
Thank you.
Fair enough?
Okay, so is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, why don't we take a vote on that?
On that motion, Member Pelpel.
Aye.
Pelpel, aye. Member Washburn, absent. Chair Hepner.
Aye.
Hepner, aye. The motion passes.
You seconded that, right?
Yes, I did.
Since there's no one else to do that. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
President Breed's people.
And moving forward,
Item number 5, file number 15063, hearing on the status of order of determination complaint filed by Mike Petralis against District Attorney George Gascon and Office of the District Attorney for violating Administrative Code Section 67.25A and 67.29-5 for failure to respond to immediate disclosure in a timely and/or complete manner, and failure to maintain a daily calendar wherein is recorded time and place of each meeting or event attended.
so just as a preliminary matter, do we have a member of the district attorney present? Mr. Petralis, do you have something?
He's in the bathroom.
Oh, he's in the restroom. Okay.
Mr. Bastian is
Myself.
here.
Not because he's in the bathroom, but I got to go to the bathroom.
Okay, why don't we take, shall we take our break
Sir,
right now?
Are you with Supervisor Farrell's office? Great. Thank you.
Oh, I got to pee, but here's Alex.
We can still take a 5-minute recess.
Could we maybe,
For the record.
could we maybe take items, sorry, Alex, could we take items 7 and 8, and maybe those won't take a while? He's got to take a restroom break. Can we do that and come back to your item? Okay.
Thank you.
Could we maybe go to items 7 and 8? You're welcome.
Yeah, do we need a motion to do so?
No.
Okay, let's just do this informally. Let's take item number 7, which is a
We can
complaint.
call them together. They are related.
Let's do that.
Item number 7, file number 14105, hearing on the order of determination, complaint filed by Ray Hartz against Supervisor Mark Farrell, Board of Supervisors, for violating Sunshine Ordinance Section 67.25A for failure to respond to immediate disclosure request in a timely and/or complete manner. Item number 8, file number 15071, hearing on the order of determination, complaint filed by Ray Hartz against Supervisor Mark Farrell, Board of Supervisors, for violating Administrative Code Section 67.25A and 67.21E for failure to respond to immediate disclosure request in a timely and/or complete manner, and failure to send a knowledgeable representative to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force meeting.
So, is Mr. Hartz present today?
He is not.
He is not. Okay, we have this communication that everything is resolved with respect to the controller's office, but nothing with respect to this, except this communication from June 30th, 2015, which, let's see, postdates the order of determination in this matter and says that he still has not received anything regarding this case from Supervisor Farrell's office. Maybe the representative from Mr. Farrell's office, Supervisor Farrell's office, can indicate whether there's been any follow-up since June 30th.
Sure.
And then we can decide whether we can proceed with this.
Yeah, definitely. Jess Montejano, Legislative Aide for Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for having me here today. My colleague, Catherine Stephanie, has usually appeared in front of the Commission here, to explain the matter. So I'm going to do my best, to represent her, as she's been the main staffer in our office, has been working on these issues. So maybe if we can take item 7, I can read the facts as I understand them from our office, give an update of what our office has communicated to Ray Hartz, and then do the same for item 8 as well. If that's
Before we get into it, has Mr. Hartz made any indication to your office that compliance has been satisfactory? Have you received any other communication from him that we haven't seen since June 30th?
Not to my knowledge. To my understanding, my colleague, Catherine Stephanie, I believe, has CC'd the clerk here, Victor Young, on that communication. Mr. Hartz has reached out to see if we could do anything else to be more responsive to his IDR request. And my understanding via Catherine is he has not responded. And in both instances, we did have nothing responsive to the request at the end of the request.
Okay, and has that been communicated to Mr. Hartz that you do not have anything responsive to the request?
In both instances, yes.
In both instances, yes. Okay. Well, the only reason I'm cutting you off is because I'm not sure that we should proceed with the hearing.
No, I think we should.
Okay.
Was that your statement on both items? I didn't want to cut you off.
Well, if I can maybe finish and read the facts as I understand them. So in terms of item number 7. The original complaint stemmed back from an IDR that he filed on October 8, 2014. Our office responded to Mr. Hartz's IDR on October 16th and explained the reason for the delay, and responded was that we did not have any documents that were responsive to his request. And this is documented in our letter to the commission here, or the task force, on November 21st, 2014. Mr. Hartz then sent another request on October 23rd asking for the same information, and we again stated that we did not have the information he was looking for. On February 4, 2015, my colleague Catherine appeared in front of the task force and explained that as soon as we received his IDR on October 16th, we performed a search of our records but didn't have anything responsive. We informed Mr. Hartz of that information on October 16th of the same. Then my colleague Catherine appeared in front of the commission on February 4th and explained what the circumstances, and made reference to the letter that Supervisor Farrell wrote to the commission on November 21st, 2015. Catherine also offered to work with Mr. Hartz to review our files for the information he was looking for. And again, Mr. Hartz has never reached back out to Catherine or to anyone in our office to take us up on that offer. And for our office, it's unclear at this point what more our office can do to assist Mr. Hartz with his complaint and this specific request. And in regards to item number 8, on May 18th, Victor Young, the clerk, sent an email to our office informing us that Mr. Hartz had filed a complaint against the office for not responding to an IDR that he sent on March 19th, 2015. Mr. Hartz sent the IDR directly to Supervisor Farrell's email and did not copy any of his aides. And it's my understanding that he did this despite having been asked to do so by Catherine in previous communication and when she last appeared in front of the task force on February 4th. Catherine explained that due to the high volume of emails, supervisor gets, it's good practice to copy the aides to make sure things are not missed. That's something that, we try to do all the time. And again, as soon as Mr. Young alerted our office on May 18th, we immediately looked for any responsive documents, did not find any, communicated that to Mr. Hartz, that we did not have anything responsive to his request. We sent a letter to Mr. Young explaining our response and letting him know that we did not have anyone to attend the task force meeting on the night of June 3rd because all the aides and Supervisor Farrell had previous commitments. We obviously regret that was the case, but with only 3 aides and overlapping commitments, we were not able to make the June 3rd meeting. And please note, this was the only meeting that I believe that our staff had ever missed in front of the task force here.
Okay, so I think what we wanted to get to the bottom of back in February when we heard this originally and subsequently issued the order of determination was, because this basically mirrors what we were told then, and we were not satisfied at the time that all the appropriate search avenues had been gone down in order to produce potentially responsive results. So do you have any specific knowledge of what kind of search was taking place, what search terms were being used, what databases were searched?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, obviously our office and other supervisors' offices receive, numerous, whether IDRs or, sunshine requests. And, what we do in particular, and I think I can speak on behalf of our office and our staff is, obviously we search our entire, email database and inbox, and we search all of our records, which is a common shared drive that every board supervisor's office has, using obviously the keywords that were submitted with the request to find, if anything was responsive or not. So, I can say with, high level of certainty that was the instance in this case, just like it was with every single case in terms of when we received those responses.
And Ms. Stefani is ordinarily the staffer who conducts that search?
No, I would say in most instances, yes. She staffs a supervisor with a schedule and is kind of referred to as our, constituent affairs director, if you will.
Sure.
And so, one of her functions, in that role is primarily, functioning to provide, kind of those searches, both for herself, both for Mark, but we all take that responsibility in the office as well, whether, we're named on it or not.
Who's the primary staff person for budget and finance?
That's also Catherine.
Okay, so that's why, because this was
It was related to the Budget and Finance Committee
Right,
document.
right.
So
Okay.
I think in that instance, it made sense that she was the most appropriate.
I see.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So I remember all of this now. I'm going back to the orders. It seems like there were a number of issues here. One was the 21E violation, failure to send someone to the June meeting. But you're here now, and we appreciate that.
And we did send a letter to that meeting.
Yeah, we
apologies for not
understand.
being-
It's better to have a person, better to know in advance when we send out a notice if you can't attend, so that we could either reschedule or deal with it. But here we are. We had asked in the earlier order, originally this was going to go to the EOT committee with a request to discuss policies and procedures for processing public records requests. Do you have written policies and procedures for handling public records requests? Do you know?
In our office?
Yeah.
We refer to the city attorney for his advice, the good government, handbook, and
Right. But do you have your own thing, or not so much?
No. Again, I think the city attorney's office, sets the guidelines, in terms of the board of how we are, to respond to those. So we follow those to the T.
Understood.
And again, I would just say, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here too. It's my understanding that the clerk of the board has a responsibility in their charter to have a charge of all records, pertaining to legislative matters to the board and its commitments.
Right. But here's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
If you have your own notes within the office for how things are handled, or what interns do and what you guys do, blah, 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 if we could get a copy of that, that would be good. As you might have heard in the earlier item, or you might be aware of generally, if the supervisor, or if you don't have an auto reply to the Mark Farrell address, it would be good to set one up that says, thanks for your thing, I get a lot of emails, I'll get back to you if I can. If you have a sunshine or public records request, feel free to send a copy of that to my aides at these addresses. Or I don't know if you have a generic address like Breed staff has, Farrell staff, something
We have
like
Farrell
that?
staff. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just say to that point real quick?
Yeah.
I will say in front of this commission, we've had that conversation with Mark.
Okay.
I think the auto reply kind of cuts both ways, if you will. I can tell you his personal opinion and why he's chosen to this time not to do it.
Okay.
He doesn't want to seem disrespectful to any constituents or people that are emailing him by getting an auto response in that matter. So again, that's just his preference and his opinion in terms of how
That's
this
fine.
goes.
Maybe-
but it's an
maybe
ongoing
if-
conversation in the office.
Fair enough. And maybe if you're on a recess or a vacation or something, it may be good to employ that as opposed to when people are actually checking.
Yeah, and he does. So throughout the month of August, when we're on legislative recess, I know for a fact that when he is out, when he's on vacation with his family or whatever he may be doing, that auto reply is.
Okay.
But that is when
But-
he is strictly out of the office and and regional.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And in particular, the line about if you have an immediate disclosure request or a sunshine public records request, you might want to send this to my aides, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we're just trying to facilitate good and timely response. Right.
I agree, and I think that's a good piece of advice, and something I'm happy to take back to the supervisor.
Excellent. So that was on the first one. In the future, if you have any, even if it's like a one-pager that says aides do this, interns do that, something that says IDR really needs to be responded to by the next day, just some things like that, if you could send those to us, we would love to see that. Ultimately, I think we're going to try to get to a uniform recommendation to the various supervisors. Here are sort of best practices. Yes, you can do whatever you want, but here's what we recommend so as to minimize the number of complaints, to get people their stuff, blah, blah, blah.
I totally agree.
I think we're getting there.
And I'm happy to go back and look at any documents I have. To my knowledge, I don't think we have any.
Okay.
The only place I could think where it might be is, we have a welcome manual for our interns and volunteers, if you will, that explains to them the
If you
functions
have a
of the
piece in there that speaks to this, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And if not, maybe you and Catherine and Mark can work on something.
Sure.
I'm not looking for an extensive thing. You get it.
Totally get it. Thank you.
Okay. And then on the second order, we asked for a knowledgeable representative. Here you are. And I think the concern there was that the response to Mr. Hartz's request and subsequent complaint were sent to the task force and weren't sent to Mr. Hartz. So I think what we wanted going forward, and I think what I would like you to do on both of these going backward, is to send an email to Mr. Hartz and say, with regard to these two items, file numbers A and B here, with regard to your request for documentation regarding the Friends of the Library and the library, blah, 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 blah. To be clear, we have no responsive records. If we have not communicated that in the past, we apologize, but we have no responsive records for you on those requests. Thank you. So, and if you would send that to Mr. Hartz with a copy to the task force, we can put them in both of these files. That would be best. Our concern is that you don't communicate with the task force and not the complainant. You communicate with the complainant or the requester with a copy of the task force, so that they're in the loop and that they don't have to come to a meeting to be told, oh, we have no responsive records. They should have gotten an email or a communication to say that beforehand. I think you get that. It was just the sort of the
maybe if I
chain
just
of
add a
communication.
point to that. Again, my understanding is in both instances, my colleague Catherine emailed Mr. Hartz directly, and said that we had nothing responsive. And
in one instance, I think that was true. In another one, it wasn't. And we just wanted to be sure.
And I think maybe if I can offer a suggestion of what we can do, happy to talk with Catherine. Obviously our emails are still on record. If and I believe we do obviously have a record of that email, we can forward it to the task force and make sure that you saw that communication happened.
It's fine. I don't. It's less for us. It's more so we can. You get it.
Yeah, I get it.
And I think underlying all of this is Mr. Hartz's contention, belief, that in order for the board to accept and expend funds from the Friends of the Library, that there's got to be some additional documentation beyond what's in the legislative file, and there just may not be.
Yeah,
The
and maybe
supervisor
I can shed some light on that in terms of kind of the standard practice for accept and expend resolutions. Oftentimes they're given to the mayor when there's a particular issue or accept and expend that the administration knows a particular supervisor cares about. It's often a courtesy or an offer to that supervisor to introduce the accept and expend, on behalf of the administration and, talk about it and whatnot. And
if it's a district thing or an issue of concern to a supervisor.
Exactly. And I would say, in my time here, well, it's going to be almost 3 years in November. Crazy. In my 3 years, in working for Mark, I can honestly say I've never written talking points for an accept and expend, and I've never received any other additional documentation outside of what was given us for those actual resolutions to go through the Budget and Finance Committee, because it's a very, and you've seen our agenda, it's very common in terms of the items and accept and
expend. And if the supervisor or an aide or anybody has a question or concern, that often will get communicated to the department head. They'll track it down, and it's rare. These are relatively routine, and they only require the board action because it's outside the budget and it's beyond 50 or 100,000, whatever the expect and expend limitation is under the admin code and the charter.
Correct.
So I get that. You get that.
So I appreciate this conversation. This is nice.
Yeah.
I regret that Mr. Hartz isn't here to hear some of it, but how can we resolve this today?
I think if you follow up with the email as we discussed with a copy to the task force, I'm good with concluding both of these matters with that understanding that that'll happen. And if you can just be sure in the email to refer to those file numbers. So when you send it to Victor when you send the copy to Victor, he'll put that in the file,
Okay.
and that'll
Right.
close them.
Right.
I think from
My very honest concern is that Mr. Hartz is going to be upset that we resolved this without him being present today.
He was notified.
He was notified. He sent a communication about the controller's office. Did he indicate that he was not going to be able to make it today?
He did not.
He did not. Okay. See, that just concerns me. Knowing Mr. Hartz, I feel like.
I don't see it in the packet. Can you show me where he was actually notified of the hearing today? There's a lot of paper here. I'm just trying to.
It's usually on the end of each item.
Yeah, I don't see it there.
You have the
Maybe I see it on
page in
one.
the packet.
390? Yeah,
You don't see the names on these anymore because I received complaints from various members that when I listed all the names, they would get CC'd all. And so I blind CC all members now, or all
Right.
respondents.
okay, but
But the
you're
so the
assuring me
agenda that you sent
page
out.
390, Victor, here, just take a look here. Victor. What's your
I
Victor?
have it.
Yeah, okay. That this email from Wednesday, October 14th went to Mr. Hartz, among others.
Yes.
Okay,
And he did respond to the one concerning the controller, so he was aware of the meeting.
okay. So I'm satisfied that he was noticed.
Okay, and I'm actually satisfied with the explanation of the search procedure, which is really what we wanted to go over today. And as long as that has been communicated to Mr. Hartz, I'm comfortable finding compliance today as well. So can I have a motion to that effect?
Yeah, and can maybe ask a question before the motion? I want to make sure I get this correct, so I take it back to Catherine and Mark. I'm to send the office is to send a follow-up email to Victor and to the commissioners on both items with all the communications that we've had between our office and Mr. Hartz and any other document.
No,
No.
we're asking you to send an email to Mr. Hartz.
Okay.
Saying that with reference to both of these files, just to be clear, that you have no responsive documents,
Okay. And then CC the.
and then you're going to CC SOTF.
Yeah, we'll do that first thing tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody? Okay. Thank you.
So,
So I will make a motion with that understanding to conclude both of these items.
okay, and I'll second that motion.
Just to clarify the motion is to find that the order of determination has been complied with and conclude the matter with the provision that the Supervisor Farrell's office will correspond with Mr. Hartz to inform them that they have no responsive documents to the two
Right.
items.
Even if it's duplicative, just so that
Sure.
it's... Yeah.
No, happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Comment on that motion?
Is there
And it's-
public comment on the motion
And
too?
this is for both items,
Yes.
7 and 8.
There being no public comment on that motion, Member Pilpil.
Aye.
Pilpil, aye. Washburn absent. Chair Hefner.
Aye.
Hefner, aye. The motion passes.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So we just did items 7 and 8, and now we're skipping back to item number 6. Is that correct?
Item number 5.
Item number 5.
We did, yeah.
We took care of item number 6.
we heard 6.
We took number 6 is the controller's office. Okay.
Item
District
number,
Attorney, item number 5.
item number 5, file number 15063, hearing on the status of order of determination, complaint filed by Michael Petrellis against District Attorney George Gascon and the Office of District Attorney.
Right. So when we heard this originally, this is regarding a request for the district attorney's public calendar. At the time of us hearing this, June 16th, 2015, the records, the full task force determined that they were inadequate in certain regards and did not reflect everything that we would like to see on a public calendar. So I don't know if you guys have just been talking outside, but why don't we hear from the complainant what is going on here, and we'll move from there. So, Mr. Petrellis.
Yes, Michael Petrellis. I believe Victor forwarded you this one-pager here.
It was more than one page. I received several.
Oh, sorry. Well, among the documents I've sent you includes whatever has been sent by Alex, including that one page for July of this year, a date in July, from the district attorney for his calendar. He's still not keeping a detailed calendar.
Okay.
So I believe there's non-compliance. And I also want to state that I guess 2 weeks ago I filed a sunshine request with Alex for travel expenses, names of people who had traveled on behalf of the district attorney, and when did they travel, how much did it cost, etc. My request was from 2003 through now. What Alex sent in 2 days, I believe, was what I had requested plus more. He sent the information for 2012. So
Okay.
And the request sending me the calendar, such as it is, the calendar comes, but the issue here is that there's really nothing on the calendar that I believe is fully complying with the law.
So, right, and just for the record, the calendar that you just passed up to us is from July 9th, 2015, and it says in handwritten just on that date, DA to conduct meetings in office all day. Is that correct? Is that verbatim what it says?
That's pretty much what's there
Okay.
when there is a listing for a work day for George Gascon.
Right. Okay, let's hear from Mr. Bastian. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this.
Hello, everybody. So there are 4 substantive changes that have occurred since the last time we've been here. First, every day there is something on the calendar. For example, on that calendar day that you speak of, there is a very clear statement about the DA's presence in the office as well as what he's doing. Second, the location of the meetings are currently on the calendar. Third, we list people if there are less than 10 people and if the meeting is not with office employees. As you all know. And fourth, there is a bit more detail in the calendar as it relates to specific events and specific things. So, as you all know, the San Francisco District Attorney's Office does fall under a different rubric, given that we do have an investigative and prosecutorial job to perform. Now, that being said, we are trying to be thoughtful. We are in communications on a variety of issues with the City Attorney's Office as well. But given that we are uniquely situated, we have made some amends in the process that we utilize as it relates to the calendar. And we're trying to be thoughtful while at the same time preserving the integrity of our investigations, of our prosecutions, and as our function as a whole.
Right, and I recall last time you were here too, you indicated that there was some concern about disclosing potentially personal information regarding ongoing investigations and who you were meeting with. And in response to that, I believe we stated that that's a very valid concern and you should redact that information. I redact the fact of the meeting with whatever person was in question. So I think that seeing a calendar with zero redactions and no reflection of meetings, specific meetings, was a problem to us. You didn't happen to bring a copy of a calendar as it's currently kept so we can kind of compare what the new practice is as compared to the old practice, which I believe is...
Does the July calendar reflect the new practice?
It does. There's a little bit more detail now. The main change was that there were days where there was absolutely nothing on the calendar, if you recall. And I recall you, sir, having said something about there being absolutely nothing on the calendar day. If the DA is in the office conducting various meetings in the office with office personnel, again, redactions and things along those lines, given the totality of everything, given the communications with City Attorney's Office, given what was indicated here last time around, what we've done is we've tried to make a gumbo, if you will, of all the various concerns and made a final kind of current situation in the calendar that takes all of the concerns into play. And as you can see, if there's a particular, I'm not sure if Mr. Petrellis provided a 2-week sample or just a 1-day sample, if there are certain events that occur on a particular date, it would indicate the location, it would indicate if it's less than 10 people and they're not meeting in the office, for example, and they're people not from the office, it would indicate that. And there is even a bit more detail as it relates to the type of meeting and what the meeting is about currently in play. So I'm not sure if that's
wait. Okay, just because this is a lot.
Sure.
The obligation extends to meetings that take place. This also. The calendar requirement also requires disclosure of attendees under 10 to meetings that take place on or outside of the DA's office. Okay.
Correct.
So,
Outside
I mean,
of the staff.
the rubric really that I trust that you're following, and you know that I just want to hear your attestation. Yes, this is what we're following. Is 67.29-5 calendars of certain officials, where a district attorney is, and it's laid out very concretely and in detail everything that you're obligated to disclose, and it indeed says that you don't have to disclose if the disclosure of that information is exempt from disclosure under state and local law. It's very clear here what is mandated to be disclosed in a public calendar now, can you just affirm that that's the information that is now being kept in the DA's office from top to bottom?
Yes. What I'm saying is that there are new changes in place, as you can see before you, that have been made to the calendar keeping process.
Since August 1st, you mean like the new calendar requirements?
We actually did it before August 1st. I recall us being here. What was the date that we were here at the last calling?
July 1st, 2015 is when this was last before us.
Okay. So from July...
if Mr. Bastian...
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what's going on.
Mr. Bastian, yeah, you're still on.
Okay. So if you recall, there was a subsequent event that also transpired with the changing of the calendaring process. We've taken that into account as well, following that as well.
Right.
That's the legislation you speak of.
Right.
But we had already began to implement certain changes before that as well. And the reason for that is not only because of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, but also because of the pending litigation that subsequently passed. So we have taken that, we are following that, but at the same time, there's going to be certain things, given that we're a district attorney's office, that are not going to be similar to, for example, a board of supervisor member, or, for example, another city agency.
But the requirements are there. I think the part of just practically the reason I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying is because the requirements here are basic and detailed, and I don't have a copy of or any example of the calendar that you're now keeping that is illustrative of your compliance with the new calendar requirements. I mean, I'm not seeing it. And
is it over?
He's asking.
Sure.
All right. It's not. You're saying there's changes.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Let
have
me confer for a second. Then
Okay.
No, they have the new one. This is April.
With it, you know.
April. You're showing me an April calendar, my friend. They're talking about since then.
Right, but whatever you've had since then is not included here.
What do you mean? You provided them an amendment or an addendum in the email that you sent them, if you recall.
Okay, do you have what he's referring to?
We've heard what he's referring to. So give us a moment to unpack it. Okay, we'll figure it out. So a few things. First, actually, to Mr. Petrellis. Since you had several complaints pending, in the future, if you send something to Victor in reference to an item, if you could include the file number, it would help get it to the right place, because I was having trouble finding the thing. It would be nice. It's a request. You don't have to, blah, blah, blah. And also, since you were referring to specific entries on this, if you could have, well, I guess it came from Mr. Bastian, so otherwise I was going to say if you could send it to him so that he could see what you're talking about, but we got it. And to Mr. Bastian, a couple of things. The changes that you referred to, in response to both the task force and the changed legislation. Have you memorialized that in writing as to your practice going forward?
I was under the impression that you have a sample because the email that I received from the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force included the most recent public record request response that Mr. Petrellis had made.
I don't think you got that from us.
I'm fairly certain I did.
Show us. Tell us.
I can even go through my emails if you like. I mean,
there was an email.
I mean, it's for example, one of the pages that Mr. Petrellis just showed you from July. So the initial.
But that came from you. Let's be clear. He made a request. I'm not clear.
Yeah,
but he made a request, and you responded August 3rd with the calendar for June and July.
Correct. That's the subsequent
August
one.
3rd, right.
Correct.
Oh, he made the request on August 3rd, and you responded on the same day. Very nice. With the calendar for June and July. And then Mr. Petrellis forwarded that to us last week, or today. Today.
I thought it was before that as well, and on a different occasion that it was forwarded. But in any case, we've been here as it relates to the April calendar, and subsequent to that, there was yet another request made after our meeting here for the June and July calendar.
Okay. At this point, I am less concerned with April. I am more concerned with June and July, and I'm very concerned with going forward.
Right.
So I want to talk for a second about the changes currently and going forward. Have you committed that to writing? Do you have anywhere in your office policy that says, here is how we put together, George the big guy's calendar?
Well, I just indicated to you some very key distinctions.
I'm just asking if you have that in writing anywhere.
Memorialized? I don't believe so.
Okay.
Bless you.
Thank you.
It would help us. It would help the process if you could
memorialize something.
Yeah, something that just says, here's what we used to do. Here's what we're now doing. Something to reflect that the changes that you've talked about. I'm not disagreeing with your changes. It would just be nice to have that memorialized. Then everyone can see it. We can feel like there was something. In terms of the substance, what you've said is good, but what I'm seeing in writing doesn't yet evidence that. So I see in the email that we got today from Mr. Petrellis, National Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Gathering, Washington. Hey, sounds fun. Office closed for Independence Day. A lot of all-day DA to conduct meetings in the office.
Right, without any specification of who was attending those meetings.
You've talked about where there are fewer than 10 people, blah, 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 blah. I haven't seen an actual example of that. I would love to see such an example.
So I think what is being either miscommunicated by me is that if the meeting is less than...
A particular speaking style is used by you, but I'm getting used to it. It's okay.
If there are less than 10 people that are all staff members, like investigators and prosecutors, that is not part of the new changes that come into play. And by law, if it is going to reveal an investigative or prosecutorial technique, is exempt from disclosure. And I think what is being misunderstood, because I'm miscommunicating it perhaps, is that if it's an event that falls under the legislation, it'll be included in the calendar. But if it's not an event, if it's a meeting in the office with members of the office that are investigators or prosecutors, that is not going to be able to be provided, given that it could compromise investigative and prosecutorial techniques, as well as other important information as it relates to those two things.
Okay.
There's no electronic calendar kept by the DA's office. Is that
This is the calendar.
This is literally the calendar. Is it?
Could you find a way to make it electronic?
I'm confused as to why. I understand that electronic is better as it relates to perhaps this body, but this is how it's been kept. If there's a reason to keep it in a way that's electronic,
it's just a question based on my experience managing fairly busy offices.
Sure.
That as a matter of necessity, you've got to, block off time pretty efficiently in order to get things done. And this is not reflecting of any
Google Calendar or
appointments
something
or meeting starts and stops, or it's just this seems very, very, very minimal for an office that is, I believe, conducting as much business as the district attorney's office is. It's just
there are really two approaches to what we used to call the Prop G calendar.
Sure.
That's now the calendar requirement. You can either take the actual working calendar and heavily redact that, right, and say, here's what we can provide, right, or you can sort of create your own. And you've gone with the create your own model. I'm not sure.
I think that's probably accurate.
Yeah. I'm not sure that.
I suspect.
Yeah. I'm not sure that we're advising you one way or the other about which model to use, but I think what we would suggest is if you're going to do the create your own model, it may be better to create your own into an electronic document, so every day when you add entries, you would just edit that same document every day, and if someone says, I want the calendar for July and August, you would just pull out, do literally a cut and paste from that document and say, here, July and August, here's that segment snippet for you. That's an approach. That might be easier than this what seems a bit outdated and cumbersome.
And like lunch meetings with, where business is discussed with, interagency or with a supervisor. I don't know, just like, I'm at a bit of a loss because I don't see anything on this calendar.
So I had a couple of other notes on the thing that we just got today, which I'm sorry, I'm just finding fascinating. There was one entry. I mean, I don't know. When one is at a conference, I mean, I think one can say, all-day conference or conference that afternoon. That's whatever. I'm less concerned with that than sort of the day-to-day business. I think there was one entry with a media interview at KGO. I would find it interesting to know who was who the interview was with.
That's fair.
And I don't think there's any the public interest in non-disclosure there. I don't think there's a problem there. I appreciate. I want to be very clear. I appreciate the all-day DA to conduct meetings in office. I think that is better than nothing. And the previous version that we saw had nothing. I am struggling to figure out this. I mean, what we got is July. This appears to me, if I'm interpreting this, that the DA was either in the office conducting meetings or out of the office at conferences and the occasional thing, and that was it. I don't see anywhere in here meetings with the mayor, meetings with Chief Sir, meetings with other community groups. It's possible that he just hangs out and does his own thing. It seems unlikely to me that he would not have any interagency meetings that you could disclose. And you could say, meeting with Police Chief Greg Sir to discuss interagency matters or to discuss police matters, or some relatively generic description that suggests that he is actually engaging in a meeting with somebody else.
I'm not fully versed based on the July month calendar exactly which incident or day you're referring to. But the police department may be kind of a unique example, given that they're an investigative agency, but perhaps in a different context with another agency as it relates to something that's not investigative in nature.
But you can still say meeting with the police chief. I can imagine any number of reasons that the DA would meet with the police chief. There might even be circumstances where he would meet with the sheriff or the public defender. There are law enforcement relationships that you've got to maintain and cultivate, and if you don't, then all of that. I think you can disclose that without necessarily disclosing the subject matter if that's sensitive.
And I'm fairly certain as it relates to, for example, let's say a sentencing commission or some other event where they're meeting and there's an event occurring, I'm fairly certain that's in the calendar. I don't know if it's in this July month calendar. And I'm also fairly certain that for lunchtimes, when the DA is in fact doing something, it's in here. For example, as it relates to July 30th, speaking speaking to the GSMA security group meeting between the hours of 11:30 and 1. But I think what I'm trying to say is perhaps...
And I'm sorry, what is the GSMA?
That was it was some kind of cell phone carrier-related
It would be good to write out what it is, because
Sure.
I don't know what GSMA is
Sure,
offhand.
that's a very good point.
Okay.
However, that being said, I don't know if July may be the most fair reference sample as well.
All I'm
but
saying
I
is, for
understand
the
what you're saying.
entire month of July, there are no interagency meeting. There's no suggestion that he ever met with any other department head on anything, and that seems unlikely to me.
Perhaps. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
if
you
he
see
did or-
him. You see him more than we do, and I'm sure he's camped out at Bryant Street some amount, but he's not there all the time. Right? Come on.
I'm going to just,
Okay.
for the purposes of time and everyone's
Yes.
sanity, I'm just going to refrain from saying too much
So,
at this
I
point.
mean, other department heads go to various meetings, supervisors get out in the community, the mayor schleps around town. The DA runs a department, but he's out there. He does stuff. You know, I'm not looking for campaign events, right? And I'll just mention that for a second. I did see him at a campaign event not long ago, and I mentioned this particular matter and said that we were going to hear this again. And he got into it with me a little bit. It was very interesting. He said that you were changing your practices a bit, but that you had consulted with the city attorney's office, and they had assured you that the practice that you were previously employing was compliant with the law, and that you disagreed with the task force's view that there was a violation. And so whatever changes you were making were somewhat voluntary, and that you didn't, he said to me publicly that you didn't really think that our work was... It wasn't a fun exchange, put it that way. And I thought that our work was actually reasonable here, and I thought what we were trying to do was not say you have to list everything, recognize that you have legitimate things that can't be disclosed or need to be redacted, but to try to find a middle ground so as to provide a public accounting, if you will, of the district attorney's work for the people, which is essentially what the calendar requirement was intended to show.
So who maintains this calendar? Who wrote these items in this calendar?
This would be the personal assistant of the DA.
Okay.
Not you.
And what is that person's name?
Her name is Robin Burke.
Robin Burke. Okay. Okay. So I would love to hear from Robin Burke on this. I would love to hear from Robin Burke what she decides to put in the calendar and what she decides not to put in the calendar.
And if there's a policy that governs that, that's what I was looking for. But either way,
again, I would rather not. I am here on behalf of the office.
But we there's a portion of the Sunshine Ordinance that requires that a knowledgeable representative be sent to the task force to talk about this. And frankly, you have less knowledge over this than does Robin Burke, who actually keeps the calendar, who enters the entries. And I'm finding you less than knowledgeable about what decisions are involved in determining what to put in the calendar or not.
Is that right? It doesn't indicate that the most knowledgeable person needs to be here. It says someone that's knowledgeable.
That's true.
And again,
That's true.
I'll
give you that, but
and I've indicated to you some substantive changes that have been placed there, and to indicate that I'm not knowledgeable and less knowledgeable
I'm sorry.
actually quite disingenuous. Actually,
it's
especially because I've been here patiently waiting. And I've
Mr.
always
Bastion,
been here
I
with
apologize.
respect.
So let's dial it
It's
back.
about giving respect and getting respect.
I hear you. And Mr. Bastian, I don't mean to say that you are not knowledgeable, like across the board, Mr. Bastian. I apologize.
It's fine.
It's as to this, I think that Ms. Burke probably has more knowledge than you on this matter. So I apologize for impugning your knowledge about this.
It's fine.
I just have a lot of questions about this. That's all. And
okay, I have a suggestion going forward. Did you? I made reference to this with one of the other people earlier. I think the Breed staff folks. Did you get a copy of the city attorney's advice about how to comply?
I did, and I've actually been in communication with them as it relates to our office, and they've actually provided us, we've had a back and forth across the board as it relates to that.
And is that you with Jana, or is it somebody else?
It is actually me with Jana, so that's why I'm a little bit perplexed by the allegation that I'm not knowledgeable about the issue.
I wish I hadn't said that. It sounds more grave than I was intending.
We're all going to distance ourselves from that comment. Okay, so on this, I think what I would most appreciate is if you could provide something to the task force that responds to that memo and says, as a result of the change in legislation, here are the specific changes in practice, call it policy, call it whatever, but in practice that we are doing with regard to the DA's calendar. We will include blah, we will redact blah types of things. We will not include blah, and here's why. So if you can, and if you can craft that, because you're a knowledgeable guy, see, and send it to the task force with a copy to the DA and to Ms. Burke, right? And maybe to Jana too, just so that you're memorializing what changes you're making as a result of your office discussion with the city attorney, whatever, what you're intending to do in response to the thing, then I think we can say either, yeah, that makes sense, and if you want to include an example of how something would play out, I just want to see that this is made to work, right? And if July wasn't the best example, right? Formulate an example of, the DA meets with X department head or X person. How would you characterize that? Would it be in the calendar? Wouldn't it? And if so, how? Right? So that we can understand how this works. Right. I want to feel like we got something that everybody sort of learned from this, and I'm not yet there. I can get there, right? Okay. I don't feel like there's any real ill will here. I just want us to all be on the same page that this is the practice going forward.
I'd like to respond.
You'll have an opportunity. So if you can think about, we're getting there. So if you'll think about that, maybe we can hear from Mr. Petrellis.
I'd just like to, if we can have some time as well in the process on a future date to come back, I would like to be able to communicate with our city attorney as well, to make sure that everything is done to the best needs.
Which is why I'm not asking for this tomorrow. Sure. I want you to have the time to do this, and we'll probably will have a further hearing on this.
Okay.
Can we hear from Mr. P?
Yes, Mr. Petrellis.
Well, I want it tomorrow. I'm tired of this. I've been here a number of times, and I'm looking at page 113 of your big packet here, the memorandum from June 11 from the city attorney's office, and I see halfway down it mentions on May 6 in response to this filing of the complaint sent an email in which he responded manner, but inadequate calendar. They denied that DA Gascon kept an inadequate calendar. Hello, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and he shows up here with nothing written down memorializing the alleged changes. He has not shown up with the August, September calendar showing us if changes have been made. And I'd like to point out that little Michael Petrellis sent you information today. I printed out this calendar date, and I want to point out the district attorney really is not a sunshine person when his Twitter account, which us taxpayers are paying for, like London Breed, he's blocking me from reading his taxpayer-funded thing. The DA is not committed to sunshine. The calendar is not a calendar. I do not want to come back. I've been here for 3 hours. I am not a paid city employee, and we deserve to know what this guy is doing besides going to all these conferences and having endless meetings with reporters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We did find a violation, and that's why we're having this follow-up hearing. We've also been here for that same amount of time, and we're not getting paid. So, okay, so what do you want to do?
Well, by Mr. Bastian's words we could find compliance. The reason that I hesitate to do that is because I look at the July meeting minutes or the July calendar that has been submitted by Mr. Petrellis subsequently, and I still, I'm a little I'm still a little bit shaky for all the reasons that Mr. Pilpel outlined, and I think we've discussed. We were brought here to monitor the new calendar policy being developed by your office, and I do appreciate the work that you've done. I do. It would be nice. It would be nice if this more recent calendar had come from you. I would like to see a more detailed outline of, in writing some of the changes that are being made. In the interest of that, I don't know. What do you think, Member Pilpel? On some level, I'm from what I'm hearing, I'm confident that changes are being made. I'm not seeing a whole lot of evidence of the implementation of changes, but
I'm interested in the implementation. That's why I asked for something. If you could put something together in the next few weeks, Mr. Petrellis doesn't have to come back unless he wants to. I would like to see sort of your office's response to the city attorney's memo, and with reference to the changes to the law. I mean, ultimately, I'd like to see more on the calendar. I don't need a minute-by-minute accounting. I would like to have a better sense of what the DA is doing. That's all. And I'm sorry, I don't. It's nothing personal. Sure. I'm not really looking for any more with regard to his affairs than any other department head. It's just that we have this complaint that's been brought to us, and it appears on its face that it's thin and it's hard to see what the DA is doing during the day. And I would just like to get a better sense. And I think that was what the intent was. And I think. And I don't think you're disagreeing with the intent. I think it's just a question of how do we operationalize this. And that's why I was looking for a memo that says, here's what we're going to do going forward. So, I mean, I think we can give you the time to do that, and we can hear this again in a couple of months. And it maybe at that time or in advance of that hearing, if you could send us not just the policy, but an example of like a week or, that latest month, with some changes. I mean, we now know what April was like, what July was like. Let's see how October and November play out with your new policy in place. I mean, at some point we're going to end this. You know that. But let's all get to a better place. I think we can do that. Yeah?
That's fair. May I suggest perhaps picking a time, maybe a month or two out, and prior to that, giving me opportunity to communicate with the city attorney's office to make sure that to do what they best recommend on behalf of our office as well, because I think that is important.
Yeah, I want to give you the time to figure that out. But I hope that you're working collaboratively with them to disclose as much as you can without getting into sources and methods and compromising investigations. We don't want to do that, but at the same time, we want to get a better sense of what he's up to. And I think you can figure out that balance. The problem here is getting enough time from Jana to focus on this. That, I think, is the limiting factor. So if you can deal with that over the next period of time.
Right. And I think, our next compliance amendments meeting is probably going to be a couple months down the line as well. And just so you know, I mean, this is an unprecedented. We have worked with the SF Arts Commission on sort of a rolling basis to monitor sort of and help implement some best practices over there. So this is just something that we can just keep track of and hopefully tidy up as we did with the Arts Commission. And it's, I appreciate your patience with it. I do.
Thank you.
So if you can work on that.
Sure.
Then let's just continue the matter.
Yeah.
No violations being found, but we'll just continue it and have an update on it.
We already found the violation. This was simply the compliance.
Correct. No additional violations being found. Thank you. And we'll kick this over to the next compliance amendments meeting a couple months down.
So
see everybody then.
Thank you. So I'll make a motion to continue this to the call of the chair, just so as to make it easier. Victor, right?
Yes. And I'll second that motion.
Okay.
There are no members of the public in the room.
Can we do that without objection?
Yes, with Member Washburn being absent.
Okay. And thank you, and again, thank you for your patience with the process here. I really do appreciate it.
And you will follow up. If you have any questions on what to include, contact Victor, but I think you get the idea, right? Mm-hmm. Not a book, a few pages in response to their thing. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Perdelis, for bringing this to us. Sorry things take forever here, but we're trying to figure it out. And thank you, Mr. Bastian.
Thank you.
Item number 10, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items.
No announcements from me, from my corner, except that it's on my docket to be working on the compliance and amendments portion of the annual report. And I hope to have something of that nature for an upcoming Sunshine Full Task Force meeting.
The
Is that the
November
4th?
meeting.
November
I
4th?
believe it is the 4th.
It is Wednesday the 4th.
Okay.
Realistically, are you going to have time?
Yeah, I probably won't have a draft for that, just because work obligations are going to...
I don't believe that it's going to be a problem.
Okay.
So if you could get to that after November 3rd or 4th,
I think
for
that
example.
that is the plan.
Yeah.
If I'm not...
Your life gets
If I'm
better.
still alive.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so are there any further announcements?
I actually, if we could sort of merge this with item 12 a little bit.
For the pending calendar?
yeah.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Were those the only two items on item 12 that are currently parked at this committee?
I believe so, yes.
And then we'll
That's good.
add that the...
I have spoken with the Department of Building Inspection. The program that we are monitoring is not live yet,
Okay.
and so there's nothing to review at this time.
Is that, I forget the specifics on that. I think I may have missed that.
There was a program
hearing.
being developed to track certain, I believe, tree placements or trees.
Okay. Thank you very much. Stay green.
As it was drafted, they could not provide information to Mr. Grossman, and we were stating as soon as it becomes active that. Mr.
Was there
Grossman
no
should-
other way that we could hear that before? I mean, could we get an interim report from them? Because I think this one has been kicking around for a while.
In terms of compliance, it needs to be active before they can comply.
And, for us to find compliance, it needs to exist.
Yes.
Could we?
I mean...
I guess I'm just wondering if we could schedule that for the next meeting and have them either send something with a timeline for the thing being in place or show up and say, this is going to happen in the next 6. I mean, if we just continue to leave this out there.
Are you thinking that this is going to catalyze the process if we put it on our calendar, or
it couldn't hurt, and I don't know.
Well, the reason it could hurt is if we drag somebody before here for a hearing that is meaningless and vacant.
Well, I'd like to hear something further. I think it would be good to move this along if we hear something further from them.
I
That's
can
all.
provide you a copy of the updates I received via email. I did inquire about this.
Okay.
And I believe I do have an email update on the matter.
I mean, it's not like our pending calendar is so large that I'm particularly anxious about, getting things removed from it. But I do understand where you're coming from, that this has been on there for a while.
I mean, in general, my view is that we should be hearing things as soon as we can on the merits, and we should try to have follow-up as soon as possible and try to close things out within 6 months or so
Right.
of the hearing on the merits. And this thing is still a 2014 file.
Right. I hear
You probably shouldn't make this type of motion in the future to
Right.
monitor the compliance of something that has not been completed.
Okay.
Anyway, I've said enough. You get the
I'll
idea.
provide you copies of the updates.
That, I think, and then we can decide, we can communicate whether to put that on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe in the future, at least at this committee or maybe at both of the committees, we could merge these items and just have the pending calendar items appear under
With the
item
future
10.
agenda items?
Yeah, because it's really,
I will try to reword it.
okay,
Thank you.
Ever changing.
doing what we can to be more efficient. I'm not sure that I had anything else on item 10. Was there?
Okay.
Do you
I'm
have a
okay with
sense?
that. I mean,
I'm just thinking a little more about next year and our calendar and all of that.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of
what the polls look like?
No. A sense of whether we should push to have this committee meet monthly as we once did instead of bi-monthly, because there are resource questions and implications and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, if again, if our pending calendar was very large, if we weren't getting through things, then maybe I'd say yeah. The only consideration pushing back on that is that we're hearing things in October now on our compliance amendments calendar that came before us with orders of determination in early June or July. So it takes a few months to get around to things, but I also think that at the rate that the departments move, this gives them an appropriate amount of time to get their stuff together. Also, our agendas aren't terribly long. I know we spent a lot of time on items tonight. I'm kind of okay with the current system.
Unless we used, if it were a short agenda, if we used that opportunity to hear new items. I mean, the balance is closing out existing things versus making recommendations to the task force to try to whittle down our backlog. So if we met more regularly, because we've had this sort of every other month in different committees. So
can we have this discussion maybe before the full task force and see if
It is scheduled for the full time.
that discussion is.
But I wanted to have
I see.
I wanted to sort of get in just a little. Just think about it.
I just don't know how much we can add to that conversation without knowing, for instance, the city attorney's availability, which is obviously scant, and
We authorized that letter. I have to finalize that letter to the city attorney asking for more time. There are a lot of things in play, but one of the things was availability of members, and I hope it's not just the two of us.
Right.
Yeah.
I personally like the idea of, going full-time with complaint committee and just packing it.
I see.
Yeah. I'm less concerned with what we call the committee as much as moving complaints through. I feel
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So it's okay.
Because if we only have one thing tonight, if we had 4 new things, regardless of what you called it, right? Those could have been 4 things.
Yeah.
But we have one recommendation.
I'm open to it. I'm open to it. I wish I was a little bit more confident that we could have 3 members here every time. I mean, I like that you're here, but we're I still feel like we're still messing with a little bit of that insecurity.
Yeah.
So,
and we do have to do some follow-up after this meeting on the things that we acted on to write up those recommendations, and some of those need to be carefully worded. So we both need to spend some time.
Yeah.
We'll be working on the November one immediately, and
Yes.
I'll try to get
December
that out,
one.
as soon as possible.
And they all got the idea, so there's that. Okay. I think I'm done with item 10. Was there anything further on that?
Is there any
I think
action
it's
you'd
okay.
like to take on the meeting minutes? Item number 11.
I'm okay with the meeting minutes.
Let's move on to item 11. I actually apologize. I did not have time to look at that. And I guess we were both there. That was the August meeting.
I mean,
We can either pass them with the understanding that I'll get edits to Victor in a day or two, or we can put it off to next time.
I say we just pass. I mean, I read through them, and I could submit some very superficial things, but I think that the substance is there. So I'm okay with that. And if you want to submit a couple changes afterwards, that's fine with me.
Is that easier for you to just do it tonight?
Yes.
But with the understanding that your changes are superficial only.
Clerical in nature only.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clerical. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Clerical nature only. Okay, so move
that
to approve.
motion?
Yeah.
Who's making that?
I'll make the motion.
All right.
On the motion to adopt the August 18, 2015 meeting minutes,
And if we could do that without
as amended?
objection. Without objection?
With pill edits to follow.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. No public comment.
there are no members of the public in the room. That motion passes without objection, with member Washburn being absent.
Great.
We already spoke on the pending calendar. I believe that completes our agenda for today.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Oh, and I'm sorry, on item 12, the other
Yes.
item, the Richard Denton, what were we waiting on there? What was the follow-up?
I believe it's a matter of, I would like to wait for his other file to be ready to go.
Okay.
And try to connect them together. Even though they are separate issues, I prefer to bring people in once and not multiple
that's
times.
cool. And maybe if we get a response from the city attorney on their attendance, because this was part of that, we're only going to show up if we have,
Right,
This is where we
right.
found a timeliness violation for the supervisor of records response.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so that I understand holding for a little bit.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, I'm good. Otherwise,
Okay.
thank you.
Item 13, adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
Without objection.
All right. All right.